Chapter 474. Ling Xian's smile disappeared under the veil. Although Zhu Chuan's life and death didn't matter, the black slave given to her by the master was in her body, but now it was killed by this mysterious woman. Her eyes were cold for a moment, and then softened. She chuckled softly. Since your strength is worthy of this ice demon, I will give it to you. I only hope that when we meet next time, you can show your true face so that I can get to know you. After that, she turned around and left. Her subordinates also ignored the death of Zhuquan, and left with Ling Xian in the blink of an eye. Su Li's face was slightly gloomy. She thought about it again and again, but still didn't catch up. Although the power she controlled by the collapse of the small mysterious realm was powerful, it was not enough to kill everyone. If Ling Xian was provoked by her and took the initiative to attack, she still had a chance to kill her. But this woman ran away without saying anything. If she continued to attack, it was hard to guarantee that the other three sects would not swarm to her. Well, those who should die will die eventually. I don't need this time. Su Li nodded in her heart, and then her eyebrows stretched. She flew to the crack with the little white fox. Yin Xuedong and the other two people were angry when they saw that she was so arrogant, but no one stopped her. Su Li's instant kill just now was enough to prove that she was difficult to deal with. Although Zhu Chuan's cultivation was not high, only in the late stage of Yuanying realm, the black slave in her body was at least in the early stage of nature's test. Young lord, should we let this woman take away the ice demon? No matter how powerful she is only one person, and the cultivation in the early stage of nature's test is not difficult to defeat. The fourth elder beside Yin Xuedong was very unwilling. She had worked hard for so long, but the ice demon was robbed by a little girl with no background. If this matter was spread, how could she put her face? Yin Xuedong stopped the fourth elder from continuing. She looked at Su Li rising into the sky, and her beautiful eyes flashed with surprise. Was it her? It couldn't be her. Fang Mu pursed his lips and looked at Su Li's back blankly. Even if they entered the reincarnation mirror for various reasons, it was wrong. Did they have a chance to atone? TSK, it's just a female cultivator who is deliberately mystifying things, yet she managed to scare you guys. Chu Qingning's sneer suddenly sounded harsh and unpleasant. Yin Xuedong and Fang Mu came to their senses at the same time. Fang Mu said coldly with a haze in his eyes, "If you want that ice demon, go get it yourself. My Sky River sect will not get involved in this mess." No matter where that mysterious woman came from, the ice demon was very close to her, which was enough to show that she had no ill intentions. Since she hadn't fallen into the hands of the other three sects, his mission could be considered completed. Haha, the Fang family is as timid as ever, Chu Qingning said and looked at Yin Xuedong, but the latter also looked away and said faintly, "If young Lord Chu can really get it, our Huangxing Hall will never intervene." She was not as detached as Fang Mu, but she still had a brain. This barren little mystery realm was right under the ice demon's nest, and the mysterious woman seemed to have been here since the beginning. Judging from her attire, she didn't look like someone from the ancient times. It was very likely that she had entered the little mystery realm alone before them. In fact, this shocking commotion was caused by her. Yin Xuedong shuddered just thinking about it. The strength of that woman was definitely not as simple as passing nature's test. If she acted impulsively, it was likely to bring big trouble to Huangxing Hall. A black light flashed in Chu Qingning's eyes, and he smiled coldly. "Holy Virgin Yin, you should keep your words. Otherwise, I will definitely kill you even if I destroy the Dark Codex." Yin Xuedong frowned uncomfortably. Before she spoke, she saw Chu Qingning's feet touch the ground, and instantly turned into a black light shooting to Su Li's back. Su Li sensed something. She turned around and calmly raised her hand. A transparent barrier appeared out of thin air. Chu Qingning grinned grimly. His arms flashed with black light and two huge sickles slashed to Su Li. Clang! In an instant, a heavy echo resounded through the world. Chu Qingning's face suddenly changed. Chu Qingning, do you dare to attack me? Su Li looked at him calmly. Chu Qingning felt cold inside, and his pupils contracted. The surging pressure of the other party made him tremble, and he even had the illusion that he would be crushed into pieces in an instant. Escape. He didn't care about others' eyes, and was about to retreat immediately. However, Su Li broke the barrier herself, and her fingertips pinched his sickle blade lightly. The speed was obviously not fast, but he just couldn't avoid it. Are you going to escape without answering my question? Su Li's pure black eyes flashed with a deep light, which made people unconsciously fall into it. Chu Qingning increasingly felt the horror of Su Li, and his tone was difficult. Senior. Before he finished speaking, Su Li suddenly narrowed her eyes, and her fingertips exerted force, and the huge sickle was broken. The blood on Chu Qingning's face instantly faded, and he spat out blood and flew down. People of Ankuei Valley and others thought that the young lord was in a stalemate with Su Li, but they didn't expect that the outcome was decided in the blink of an eye. Their faces changed greatly, and they were about to fly up to help. However, a shadow was faster than them. Everyone only saw a gray shadow flashed in front of them, and Chu Qingning flew backward into the arms of an old man in a gray robe. It's the third elder. The third elder came in person, and the demon girl can't escape. The old man in a gray robe first temporarily stabilized Chu Qingning's injury, and then he vigilantly looked at Su Li, who was high above. Under the astonishment of the elders of Ankuei Valley, he saluted to Su Li. I, young Lord Gu, have no intention to offend you, but I have recently practiced a strange skill, and I still can't control it. After that, he retreated with Chu Qingning in fear. Su Li's eyes flashed, and she immediately thought of a practice method. 7-feather evil skill. Chu Qingning was not a member of the Yinma cult. Where did he get this practice method? Or was there a high-level member of the Yinma cult in Ankuei Valley? Ow ow ow! She was distracted for a moment, and the little white fox in her arms suddenly stood up and screamed. A thin layer of ice immediately covered Su Li. In the next moment, a snow-colored stripe of several meters thick burst out from the casual practitioners of Ankuei Valley, and Su Li was drowned in the blink of an eye. After the white light, there was no sound of Su Li. Only the little white fox fell in the air and whined. That female practitioner is dead? Such a shocking change was unexpected to everyone. Ahem, a white-haired old man in casual practitioner's clothes slowly walked out. Every time he took a step, the surrounding practitioners retreated a few steps, and the terrifying breath spread. Everyone saw that it was he who killed the invincible mysterious woman with one move. Grand Elder of Han's sect. The old man in a gray robe of Ankuei Valley recognized the identity of this person at a glance, and looked shocked. Although he had the cultivation of the late stage of nature's test, those who could serve as the Grand Elder in the Holy Sect were at least at the early stage of Deshang realm, which was already the existence of the junior emperor of the human clan. To go through the test to Huashan realm, one must go through the test of thunder. No one knew how many people died under the thunder. He was afraid that he could not survive one move from the Grand Elder of Han's sect. The deterrence brought by such a strong person was almost destructive. In the blink of an eye, a large open space appeared around the old man. No one expected that an ice demon would lead out a strong person of this level. Yin Xuedong and Fang Mu stared at the sky in a daze. Did the female practitioner with a temperament very similar to Su Li die like this? Haha, I just need an ice demon to make medicine. This little thing came at the right time. The white-haired old man reached out to grab the falling little white fox. The little white fox's eyes were full of fierce light, and even with hatred, it made a childish howl at the white-haired old man. Fang Mu couldn't bear it and subconsciously moved forward, but he was stopped by the elder behind him. Young lord, calm down. This matter is out of control. Even if we take out our trump cards, we are definitely not the opponent of the Grand Elder of Han's sect. Just as the white-haired old man was about to grab the fur of the little white fox, the smile on the old man's face suddenly froze. A white hand appeared out of nowhere and resisted the withered hand like bark. The little white fox returned to the soft embrace. The white-haired old man's eyes widened slightly, and he wanted to withdraw his hand. But the young woman opposite seemed to turn into a world, so heavy that he couldn't even withdraw his hand. "Who are you? Don't you know that this world is my territory? You wantonly cross the boundary. Aren't you afraid of the punishment of the fate ancestor?" The white-haired old man's face became cold, and he didn't mention anything about robbing the ice demon. Suli calmly pacified the little white fox who was still angry. She looked calm and her chuckle fell into everyone's ears. "Ha ha! Old man, you are a junior emperor of the human clan. Are you proud of hiding in the dark and making a sneak attack?" After that, Suli's eyes narrowed slightly, and her killing intent was revealed. The white-haired old man's face remained unchanged. He pinched an ice flower with one hand and threw it to Suli's face. The ice flower left the old man's hand and instantly turned into a burning ice flame. The air was burned and sizzled. The gray-robed old man's eyes widened. It was the secret method of Han's sect. Ice flower flame. The Grand Elder of Han's sect actually used a killing move as soon as he made a move. She held the little white fox in one hand and grabbed his hand in the other. How could she resist? Sensing the dangerous breath of the ice flower, Suli finally looked a little serious, and her hair fluttered without wind. In an instant, the wind and clouds in the broken small mysterious realm changed. She didn't make any movement, but the ice flower flame was directly extinguished. Seeing this scene, the Grand Elder of Han's sect didn't understand, and his face suddenly changed. "You are a ghost." Suli didn't give him another chance to speak. With a move of her mind, countless fragments of the small mysterious realm gathered and turned into a tornado that swept the Grand Elder of Han's sect. The golden body at the early stage of Deshang realm was smashed in the blink of an eye, revealing the golden bones in it. Ah! The screams echoed between heaven and earth, and there was a dead silence around. Seeing the Grand Elder of Han's sect being punished by dismemberment, everyone was pale and their scalps were numb. "Stop. If you kill me, Han's sect will be absolutely irreconcilable with you, and I will chase you to the ends of the earth." The Grand Elder of Han's sect was full of pain. Half of the skin and flesh on his face disappeared, and his silver-white hair was cut off, but his mouth was still very hard. Suli turned her eyes and looked at the Grand Elder, who was struggling in the vortex of fragments. She pretended to be surprised and smiled. "It turns out to be the Grand Elder of Han's sect. That's great. I was worried about how to collect interest from Han's sect. You send yourself to me, which saves me a trip." As soon as she finished speaking, the power of the small mysterious realm was added, and the fragments suddenly became more fierce, leaving traces on the golden bones. The Grand Elder of Han's sect widened his eyes, and fear gushed out from the bottom of his heart. He no longer cared about his face and cried, "Don't kill me! I am willing to be your servant forever." "Really?" Suli tilted her head. Just as a hope rose in the heart of the Grand Elder of Han's sect, he saw the woman suddenly shook her head and sighed, "Forget it, I'm too tired. You'd better go to hell." Boom! The corner of the small mysterious realm rushed straight to the Grand Elder of Han's sect, and directly smashed him into meat paste, leaving nothing behind. "Devil, you are a devil!" The last scream of the Grand Elder of Han's sect echoed between heaven and earth. A bone-piercing chill filled everyone's heart. Chapter 475. A quasi-martial emperor has fallen. The gray-robed elder looked at the golden minced meat on the ground, and the fear that had been dormant in his heart for many years suddenly woke up. His mind was in a mess, and he couldn't think for a while. Even he was like this, the rest were even worse. They stood absent-mindedly like sculptures. As soon as the great elder of Han's sect died, the little white fox immediately calmed down. It rushed to Su Li's shoulder and looked around with sparkling eyes. Su Li glanced at the black lotus that took away the soul of the great elder of Han's sect, and turned to leave. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. There was a figure in front of her. His thin figure was shrouded in a large casual practitioner's robe, and he looked extremely embarrassed. Under the jade-colored bone mask, he stared at Su Li's face with deep eye sockets, full of killing intent. Su Li smiled, and Ling Li was at a loss. She had imagined many scenes of meeting Ling Li again in Qing Shui's circle, but she didn't expect it would be at this moment. "Do you want to kill me?" Su Li's voice was flat, and a pair of clear eyes seemed to penetrate Ling Li's body and see inside his body. "With the sword in your body?" Ling Li's pupils shrank suddenly, and he stepped back subconsciously. Could she sense the Lihen sword? It was impossible. He was the monument keeper. "I heard that you have a son, who is about 1,000 years old now," Su Li said casually, but her eyes were fixed on Ling Li's reaction. Ling Li was shocked and immediately thought of many things. Only the trusted followers of the Lord of Xingtian Palace knew the existence of Su Buong. Was this woman also from Xingtian Palace? No, she just killed the people of Fate Ancestor. She shouldn't be. His mind was in a mess for a while. He carefully recalled the trap he made in the past, and there were no loopholes. Who leaked the news? No matter who it was, this woman had something to do with the Lord of Xingtian Palace. The fewer people knew the existence of Wang, the safer he would be. Ling Li made up his mind, and his eyes were firm. With a thought, a sword sound came from his body in an instant. The Lihen sword trembled and began to appear in his hand. However, this process was abruptly interrupted halfway through. Su Li's pretty face was slightly cold. She bent her fingers, and the remaining 30% of the small mysterious realm instantly collapsed into countless fragments, covering Ling Li. The power of the broken world sucked, and the rules of Qing Shui's circle were instantly covered. Ling Li groaned, and the half of the sword blade in his hand turned into powder again. At this moment, Su Li suddenly narrowed her eyes, and a red line appeared in front of her. When the sword returned to Ling Li's body, the end of the red line was immediately missing. Looking at Ling Li, who was shrouded by the fragments of the small mysterious realm, he could not breathe, as if he was drowning. Su Li was suddenly very angry. Although she had already warned herself that Su Li had died long ago, at this moment, the anger in her heart was like a volcanic eruption, which was irresistible. She stepped forward and appeared in front of Ling Li in a flash. She grabbed Ling Li's collar and her eyes were cold. The words full of resentment seemed to be squeezed from her teeth. "Ling Li, do you really want me to die? You're willing to sacrifice your lifespan to send me to hell?" Ling Li was shocked, and his scattered pupils condensed again. He gritted his teeth and couldn't say a word, but he just mouthed what he wanted to say. "Even if I am cut into pieces, I will never let anyone touch my son." Su Li was stunned suddenly and let go of Ling Li's collar. Most of the rioting fragments of the small mysterious realm also gathered and floated beside Su Li, like a pavilion in the air. Ling Li only felt that his body was relaxed. Seeing Su Li in a trance, he turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the sky without saying a word. Even if he had many doubts about the identity of the mysterious woman in his heart. But for the sake of Wang Er, he couldn't take risks. Su Li watched Ling Li leave and did not stop him. Her calm eyes faintly showed a trace of gentleness and surprise. At least, he didn't seem to be as cold-blooded and ruthless as the rumor said. At least, she knew that her son was still alive, not killed by Ling Li himself as the rumor said. "Master, there is more than one Grand Elder in Han's sect. Let's run." Black Lotus held the soul of the Grand Elder of Han's sect and shivered. He only devoured a part of the memory of the soul, but he knew that the strength of Han's sect was much more terrifying than he imagined. There was more than a junior emperor behind the holy sect. Su Li nodded and glanced at the frightened people behind her. Then she turned and floated away. The little white fox looked at the world of ice and snow and opened its mouth to take a breath. The ice and snow all over the sky poured into its stomach like a bottomless pit. Enchantment and others immediately felt that the biting chill began to subside immediately, and the temperature began to warm up. But those who were frozen to death could no longer be resurrected. Fang Mu glanced at Chu Qingning, who was unconscious in the arms of the third elder of Ankue Valley, and looked at the sky that gradually cleared up. Was this a natural disaster or a man-made disaster? Who could say for sure? Suddenly, he inadvertently saw a familiar figure, but the figure left extremely fast and disappeared into the sky in the blink of an eye. Eldest brother! Fang Mu shouted and chased after him without saying a word. Although the people of Tianhe sect didn't see it, when they heard the news of the first young lord, they couldn't sit still and followed him. After Su Li left everyone's sight, the little white fox spent half a quarter to absorb the cold air of the entire ghost region into its body, and then fell into a deep sleep. Su Li put it into Tsang Lei's cave, and then changed into a casual practitioner's clothes and changed her face. She quietly mixed into the casual practitioner's team and entered through the entrance of the small mysterious realm of Han sect. Although the casual practitioners around saw Su Li was a little unfamiliar, they gathered here as a motley crew, so no one looked for trouble. They just wanted to leave this place of trouble as soon as possible. A grand elder of Han sect died, so it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't vent their anger on them. Su Li landed on a mountain top and communicated with Black Lotus for a moment. Then she grabbed a female disciple of Han's sect to replace her and went to the treasure house of Han's sect. With the soul of the grand elder of Han's sect in her hand, there was no secret in the entire Han sect for her. Halfway through, Su Li passed the mountain range that welcomed guests and suddenly stopped. Her eyes were fixed on a flushed face. I said, "I didn't steal anything from you. Don't go too far." Su Buwang was furious and explained with a red face, but the two disciples of Han's sect in front of him didn't mean to let him go. "You are just an nonentity in Jindan realm. How dare you quibble? We have observed you for several days. The blood-colored treasure is clearly the red soul treasure that was stolen from our peak a few days ago. Yes, little thief, you dare to go up the mountain to steal when the gate of my sect is open. You are really tired of living. I heard from my master that the ice demon has fallen into the hands of the grandmaster of my sect. Your elder hasn't come back yet. I'm afraid that he has died outside, right?" Su Buwang's face changed slightly, and he couldn't help but scold. "Nonsense. Uncle Fang is so powerful. How could he die?" As soon as these words came out, the older disciple of Han's sect immediately sneered. "Ha ha! It's rare to be naive. Junior fellow apprentice, open his stomach. I saw the blood stone hidden in his body 2 days ago." Su Buwang was horrified and immediately retreated. But his strength was limited. How could he be the opponent of 2 practitioners in Yuanying realm? He was caught in their hands in an instant. The flying sword stabbed straight into his abdomen. The cold light flashed, and he closed his eyes in horror. Puff, the imagined pain did not come. Su Buwang's mind was blank for a moment. Suddenly he felt that his face was wet, and then he remembered to open his eyes. With this force, the 2 headless corpses fell backward. Su Buwang screamed in fright and retreated while trembling. Did I kill them?" The corpses fell to the ground. Su Buwang saw that there was a woman who looked younger than him standing behind the corpses. She was looking at him with a very strange look. "Master, the pneuma of this kid and your previous life seems to have a deep connection." Black Lotus, who was gnawing the soul of the Grand Elder of Han's sect, did not forget to come out to remind Su Li. Su Li pressed him back into the ring space. Looking at Su Buwang's facial features, which were 60% similar to hers in her previous life, she couldn't help smiling. He had grown so tall. "What's your name?" Su Li suddenly said. Her voice was ethereal, like the tinkling of spring water. But there were 2 headless corpses behind her, which really aroused Su Buwang's interest in appreciation. This woman was so murderous. She was not a kind person. Su Buwang was racking his brains to deal with it. Suddenly, Su Li's eyes narrowed. She pulled off the clothes on one of the corpses and forced Su Buwang to change them. Then she put away the two corpses directly and carried him away quickly. Where are you taking me? I'm still waiting for my elder to come back. If he can't find me, he will definitely be angry. Su Buwang was held by a pair of invisible hands. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop moving forward. Su Li frowned when she saw Su Buwang's embarrassed look. What had Ling Li taught him all these years? Why didn't he have any alertness to deal with danger? When she thought of this, a red light suddenly enlarged rapidly in front of her. She narrowed her eyes and reached out to catch it. When she opened her hand, she saw a blood-colored round stone. It was this thing. Su Li's memory drifted away, and she instantly thought of the origin of this thing. In the reincarnation mirror, she killed Lin Yanxing and got this bloodstone from his body. Unexpectedly, it was inherited by her son. Looks like you've learned a thing or two over the years. At the very least, your sneak attack is quite decent. Su Li chuckled. Su Buwang's eyes widened. He took off his disguise and panicked. This stone had been in his body since he was born. When he was 18 years old, he barely drew it out of his body. Although he couldn't see the secret in it, except for him, no matter what cultivation the person held in his hand, he would be sucked dry in an instant. This stone had always been used as his trump card, but now there was an enemy who could be completely immune to it. Su Li finally got a moment alone with her son, and she couldn't bear to continue to scare him. After leaving a mark on the bloodstone, she put it back into her body and said casually, "Don't show this thing to others at will. If the master of Xingtian Shrine knows it, he will inevitably rob it." Su Buwang carefully sensed the blood stone that returned to his body. After finding that there was no discomfort, he breathed a sigh of relief. But when he heard the second half of Su Li's words, he was inevitably afraid. Fortunately, he had a low status in Xingtian Shrine and had no chance to meet the master of Xingtian Palace. Feeling Su Li's kindness, Su Buwang was slightly relieved. He blinked his eyes and asked cautiously, as if he met Fang Yuan for the first time, "Little brother." "Su Buwang. Senior, where are we going?" Chapter 476. Su Li stopped and stared at Su Buwang, who was at a loss. "I asked you to forget me, and you named him Buwang?" Su Buwang found that Su Li was looking at him with a very strange look again. He laughed awkwardly and thought about the words just now, but he didn't find anything wrong. Just when he wanted to ask, Su Li suddenly withdrew her gaze and continued to walk to the depths of Han's sect. "Senior, I'm going to get something, and I'll leave after I get it." "What is it?" After Su Buwang asked, he felt that he had made a mistake and wanted to slap himself. "Why did you talk too much? What if you were killed if you knew too much?" He was nervous, and a look of regret appeared on his face. Su Li glanced at him with a faint smile and said softly, "A thing that belongs to me." Su Li was very fast, and Su Buwang followed her unimpeded all the way to the forbidden area where the Grand Elder of Han's sect lived. Su Buwang was frightened at first, but he calmed down after arriving at the forbidden area. On the way, they met many powerful practitioners of Han's sect, but those people seemed to see him and the mysterious woman and let them enter the forbidden area of Han's sect. Black Lotus. Su Li called in her heart and asked him to continue to show the way. Although there were various means to defend the forbidden area, Black Lotus had absorbed the memory, so all the tactical matrices and prohibitions were not obstacles. "Master, there is only one old man who is practicing in isolation in this forbidden area, and the rest have left. Most of them went to track down your whereabouts in order to kill their Grand Elder." Black Lotus's words were full of excitement. Those powerful figures of Han's sect could never imagine that Su Li not only did not escape, but also went deep into their base camp. Suli raised her eyebrows, took off the ring of reincarnation mirror from her waist, and threw it casually. The mirror ring immediately lit up with a white light and quickly rushed to one of the palaces. Suli immediately followed. Su Buwang also followed, and his eyes were bright. Although the place where he grew up was extraordinary, it was the first time for him to have such a novel experience. Although he liked to pretend to be stupid and careless, it did not mean that he was stupid. The woman who brought him in dared to steal things from the forbidden area of Han's sect. It was too exciting. The reincarnation mirror stopped in front of a palace and kept trembling, but it still didn't mean to communicate with Suli. Even if it had this ability for a long time, the grievances of the previous life were still there. It didn't know how to face Suli, who had become its real master. Fortunately, Suli did not force him. Standing in front of the palace for a moment, she got the handprint of starting the palace from Black Lotus. A moment later, a gap was silently pushed open in the palace. Suli pulled Su Buwang and rushed into it without saying a word. They went straight to the treasure room in the deepest part of the palace. "This is that unlucky bastard's bedroom, there are no traps. I think he never thought that he would die, hee." Black Lotus hugged the divine soul and laughed happily. Suli didn't bother to pay attention to it. She opened the door of the addendum, and the nimbus that had been sealed for many years instantly surged out. Su Buwang took a deep breath and suddenly felt like a fairy. The bottleneck in his body, which had not moved for a long time, actually had a tendency to loosen. When he saw the dazzling array of cultivation treasures, elixirs, rare materials and celestial crystals in the room, he almost drooled. He had lived for more than 1,000 years, but he had never seen so many treasures. Unfortunately, he didn't dare to take any of them. Su Buwang glanced at Suli, who was already collecting treasures, and sighed secretly. "Not bad, not bad. This old bastard has lived for 7,000 or 8,000 years, and his collection is quite rich. Do you see the universe rings on the 2 shelves? They are all advanced materials for forging magic treasures, which are priceless." Suli immediately went forward to check the 2 rings. After finding no tracing mark, she threw them into Tsang Lei's cave. Treasures like the secret vault of the Grand Elder of a sect were all private collections, but she still didn't dare to be careless. She checked every treasure, and threw them into the space of Black Lotus if she was not sure. According to Black Lotus's temperament, there must be a lot of good things hidden in the ring space. Unfortunately, if she didn't force him into a desperate situation, she could only see those things when her cultivation was stronger. An hour later, the stone room was 80% empty and became bare. There was no longer the previous jewelry. There were only a few scattered jade boxes on the elixir shelf that had not been checked. Su Buwang sighed again and scolded himself for being a coward. He didn't dare to take any of them. Suli opened a jade box casually, and the fragrance came to her nose. She took the ammunition in her hand and sniffed it carefully. Qitian elixir. Although the name was ordinary, it was well known in the cultivation circle. This elixir couldn't increase cultivation, but it could make up for congenital deficiencies and greatly improve a person's cultivation aptitude. For those who were possessed by the devil and destroyed their foundation, it was a holy elixir to repair their foundation. This old bastard actually has such an elixir, but I didn't find it in his memory. It's really weird. Suli shook her head slightly and responded in her heart. Judging from the different refining methods and uneven quality of the elixirs collected by him, I know that he is not proficient in refining elixirs, and may even be born with elixir blindness. He can only say that he is unlucky that he doesn't know the elixir in front of him. After responding to this, Suli suddenly turned around and flicked her fingers. The elixir turned into a light and shot into Su Buwang's mouth. Su Buwang only felt pain in his throat, and swallowed his saliva subconsciously. The elixir melted in the water and immediately turned into a warm current flowing into his abdomen. "What did I eat?" Su Buwang was stunned. He touched his belly and felt warm and indescribably comfortable. But he was still flustered. Who knew whether that thing was good or bad? Su Li checked the remaining elixirs and found that there was no one suitable for Su Buwang. She put them all away and turned around with a rare stern look. You have to be smart enough to live in the cultivation circle. How can you behave so sloppily? It was just an elixir just now. If I sneak attack you, what will the consequences be? Su Buwang couldn't raise his head and had no way to refute her. He also felt strange. Even when he was with Uncle Fong, he still had a little vigilance in his heart. But when he was with this woman, he always relaxed unconsciously. Could it be that this was some kind of secret skill of subtle influence? Su Buwang suddenly panicked and subconsciously stayed further away from Su Li. Su Li looked at his movements, pursed her lips and tilted her head in confusion. Black Lotus, was I very fierce just now? Black Lotus also looked puzzled. Probably not. Then why is he so afraid of me? Black Lotus rolled his eyes. I am not a roundworm in your son's stomach. How do I know why? Why don't you ask him directly? Su Li glanced at him coldly and said lightly, Reincarnation mirror, have you finished eating? Let's go to the next one. Whoosh! The ring of reincarnation mirror, which was much thicker, immediately flew out. There were still some fragments stuck on it, which had not been completely digested. The spirit of reincarnation mirror suddenly felt that it was not bad to follow Su Li. At least it didn't have to do anything. It just needed to eat the fragments when it woke up. Otherwise, should I take the initiative to offer myself and recognize her? The little beast hesitated and suddenly remembered that its body was exactly the same as when it killed Su Li in the previous life. Its ears drooped again and it slowly flew out. We don't have much time. We can only choose another palace to break in. Damn donkey, look carefully. Which palace has the most fragments? As soon as the thought of Black Lotus was transmitted, the reincarnation mirror whizzed and flew to a huge palace that was several times larger than before and surrounded by fairy air, buzzing and trembling. Su Li looked through the palace and saw the horrible figure sitting inside. Her face suddenly darkened and she grabbed reincarnation mirror. This one won't work. In the end, reincarnation mirror still chose a second-level palace. Su Li took a slight breath and threw a protective tactical matrix to Su Buwang. A flying sword, a magic instrument just obtained from the treasure house, appeared in her hand. She reached out to hold the hilt of the sword and closed her eyes gently. Su Buwang immediately saw the power of pneuma and blood surging behind her, and the sound was buzzing, as if there was a blood dragon roaring. After a moment of accumulation, she suddenly opened her eyes and chopped down with the flying sword held high. Boom! The main hall collapsed and became a ruin. No matter how many forbidden tactical matrices were in it, they all turned into nothingness under this move. Su Buwang gritted his teeth and covered his ears, but his ear holes were still shaken and bleeding. However, at this moment, he didn't care about the pain. He just stared at the destroyed palace with his eyes wide open. So powerful! Before he had time to sigh, he saw a black shadow flash in the ruins, and he was taken away and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Hanging reincarnation mirror, which was still digesting the fragments, on her waist, Su Li took a step and crossed a few miles. She left the range of Han's sect in the blink of an eye, but she still did not slow down. There was always a pneuma of Junior Emperor behind her. After a few breaths, Su Li had reached the edge of the ghost region. She glanced at Su Buwang, who had been in a daze because of the wind caused by the extreme speed. She immediately paused and unfolded Song Lei's cave, sending him to one of the stone beds. After doing this, the pneuma behind her had approached within 3 miles. Su Li's face became cold, and the all-spirits tactics covered her face again. Countless fragments of the small mysterious realm appeared beside her out of thin air. As she stretched out her hand, a torrent like the end of the world surged in an instant. The old man in purple, who was chasing Su Li, changed his face instantly when he saw this. He turned around and fled without saying a word. Seeing this scene, he knew who he was chasing. That was the demon girl who killed his senior fellow apprentice in one move. His strength was not even half of his senior fellow apprentice's. If he went up, he would be killed. He kept fleeing and didn't dare to look back. When he returned to the range of Han's sect, he sensed that the fragments of the small world chasing behind him faded away. After surviving a disaster, he took a long breath and his back was wet. At this time, a cold voice sounded in his ear. This time, Han's sect offended me as a warning. Don't force me to kill more people. If you want to make peace, go back and ask your old ancestor, and he will know. At the end of the sentence, the voice lingered. The old man in purple looked pale. That demon girl turned out to be a figure of the same era as the old ancestor? Senior fellow apprentice, you are dead, but you also caused a big trouble for the sect. Chapter 477. Throwing a smoke bomb to Han's sect, Suli didn't care about the consequences. She flew to a nearby town and woke up Su Buwang, who was still in a coma. Su Buwang only felt that he had a dream. He dreamed that he went to an immortal's cave. The details in the stone room were very clear, as if it were real. But the dream was interrupted by Su Li's awakening before long. He got up from the bed and rubbed his head, which still hurt a little. He couldn't help but look at Su Li with complaints, but he didn't dare to say anything excessive. Senior, where are we? Su Li pointed out of the window. Su Buwang saw the plaque of the town at the same level as the second floor of the inn, and couldn't help but cover his eyes. It was so shameful. As wise as I am, how could I ask such an idiotic question? I'm leaving. Do you have the carrier rune of your elder? Su Buwang took out a jade rune readily and said with a smile, of course. Senior, you are leaving now. Where are you going? Su Li glanced at him coldly and didn't answer. Su Buwang felt numb on his scalp. He couldn't wait to slap himself. Why couldn't he control his mouth? This female senior was really evil. She always made him let down his guard unconsciously. Damn it. He thought about it, but he didn't slow down and sent a message to Fang Yuan. After a while, Su Li's gaze, which was staring out of the window, suddenly froze. Then she took a deep look at Su Buwang, and her body disappeared like smoke. Senior, Su Buwang murmured softly. Although he only spent half a day with Su Li, he didn't know why he was a little reluctant in his heart. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly appeared beside him. Who are you calling? Su Buwang was suddenly shocked. He turned his head and saw Fang Yuan. The shock on his face eased, and he said helplessly, Uncle Fang, you finally come. I almost lost my life in this half a day. Fang Yuan looked at Su Buwang carefully and found that he was not injured. He was slightly relieved. I was delayed by something. What happened to you? Su Buwang immediately told him what he had encountered, but he did not find that the more Fang Yuan listened, the more unstable his expression was. Finally, there was a little excitement in his eyes. He walked to the place where Su Li sat before and sat down slowly. Thinking of the person's voice and smile, he picked up the still warm teacup and looked at the half-eaten peanuts on the plate. For a moment, he was in a trance. If he hadn't been delayed by Fang Mu, wouldn't he have been able to see her? If they weren't connected by blood, how could she sense Wang Er's location? If it weren't for his safety, she wouldn't have taken him out of the Han school and settled him down in this mortal town, regardless of her own situation. No. For the sake of Wang Er's safety, she would not leave immediately. Fang Yuan suddenly shivered and rushed out of the window in a flash, which made Su Buwang at a loss. Has Uncle Fang lost his mind? Fang Yuan hadn't used his full strength for a long time. Fortunately, this town was just a mortal town. Even if he wantonly scanned hundreds of miles with his spiritual awareness, he didn't alarm anyone. No, not even a practitioner. It's impossible. Fang Yuan stood in the nothingness, but his expression was not as calm as usual. Instead, he was full of uneasiness and tension. He opened his mouth, but the name that had been hovering in his mind for thousands of years was stuck in his throat. He couldn't say it. Taking a deep breath, Fang Yuan managed to calm down. His voice was transmitted to the surroundings through his spiritual awareness, which was extremely hoarse. Su Li, is that you? I know that you're definitely still alive. How could someone like you leave so easily? Don't hide. I know you must be worried about Wang Li. The words came out one after another, but there was no response. The expectation in Fang Yuan's eyes gradually became disappointment. He had experienced this kind of disappointment many times in the thousands of years since he came back. He even got used to it. Li, I will take good care of Wang, even if he is that person's flesh and blood. Fang Yuan murmured to himself. His spiritual awareness that covered hundreds of miles slowly shrank and turned into the usual decadent appearance. Then it fell into the town below. But he didn't see that behind him there was a beautiful figure quietly watching his back. She was only a few feet away from him. Until Fang Yuan entered the inn, Su Li withdrew her gaze and flew to the nearest teleportation matrix. Tut tut, it is said that people are not plants or trees. Why do I feel that your heart is harder than iron and stone? Fang Yuan's life is probably ruined by you. Black Lotus came out and began to court death again. Su Li didn't get angry. She just sighed softly, and her delicate and white face showed a trace of rare depression. Whether it is true or false, I don't have the qualification to accept it. How could I have the right to accept it? I don't even dare to acknowledge Wang. Everything is not the right time. At this moment, the emotions on her face gradually converged and returned to coldness. She sped up and flew to the teleportation matrix. Although the ghost region was frozen for only half a month and then disappeared, the aftermath shocked the entire Qingshui circle. In the peaceful era, a grand elder of holy sects, equivalent to a junior emperor of human clan, died. It was so shocking that even millions of people in the entire ghost region were frozen to death were suppressed by this news. At the same time, Su Li, the culprit of this matter, also received a lot of attention. But because Su Li covered her face at that time, and she came and went without a trace, no one knew her origin. Even the largest intelligence organization in Qingshui Circle, Tianyake Attic, couldn't find out the details. So, the revenge of the forces finally disappeared. However, although Tianyake Attic didn't find out Su Li's identity, it didn't prevent them from inferring Su Li's name. Descendant of Ghost Clan. The ancestral land of Ghost Clan had been destroyed, leaving many traces. If Tianyake Attic couldn't find this, it would be unworthy of its name. Ghost Clan had been extinct for nearly 10,000 years. If the woman had stayed in the small mysterious realm, she would be at least 10,000 years old now. Her foundation was horrible, so it was not surprising that she killed the Grand Elder of Han's sect with one move. These speculations were recorded in the Qingshui Calendar Chronicle by Tianyake Attic and spread very quickly. After Su Li returned to an sect, she saw a book on her desk. She opened it and looked at it. Tianyake Attic's imagination was rich enough. After all, the old men in the reincarnation mirror were likely to know that she had the Black Lotus ring. Originally, she was worried that someone would associate it with the Black Lotus. Now Tianyake Attic also described her as an old man, so there was no need to worry about trouble in a short time. Li, are you looking for me? Not long after, Hua Yan came in. She didn't stay idle these days when Su Li left. With the help of the rich Hualing pool, her cultivation made great progress in a short time. It was less than half a year before she promoted to Yuanying realm, and she made another breakthrough and reached the middle stage of Yuanying realm. Su Li nodded gently and waved her hand. The stone door behind Hua Yan was automatically sealed. Hua Yan was suddenly shocked. She quickly walked to Su Li and sat down. She frowned and said, "Why are you so careful? Is it possible that your identity?" Suli looked at her sincere face and shook her head slightly. She said, "Do you still remember the origin of that bloodstone?" Hua Yen was slightly stunned. She immediately reached out and touched the universe ring. A light flashed in her palm, and the blood-colored diamond-shaped stone covered with cracks reappeared. "Of course I remember." Hua Yen smiled and didn't ask why Suli suddenly cared about it. She said, "At that time, I was still a nobody in the sect, but you were already a very outstanding genius in Yushu sect. At that time, the demons woke up and brought disaster to all living beings. You and I both received the order from the sect to go down the mountain to kill the demons. Then we met in the Shengling mountain. You and I hit it off at first sight and regretted not meeting earlier. Although my strength was not as good as yours, there were many flower demons in the Shengling mountain. It was easier for me to deal with them than you. We killed a blood-colored flower demon together and found this thing in the private collection of the flower demon, but we didn't know what it was used for. In order to kill that flower demon, we planned for a long time and finally paid the price of serious injuries. But it was you who decided the final victory. I always thought that this bloodstone should be yours, but you didn't want it and asked me to take it back. You also said that the goodies should be kept within the family." Speaking of this, Hua Yan's eyes showed an indescribable light. "At that time, I faintly guessed that your situation was not as good as it seemed, but I didn't expect it would be so serious." Suli listened to the past quietly with a smile all the time. But Black Lotus nagged in her ear with a black face, "Well, little Suli, I was worried about you and was afraid that Hua Yen would betray you. Turned out that the bloodstone was obtained by you two at risk. I'm so angry." Suli blocked Black Lotus's words without a trace. She turned her hand and took out the 2 bloodstones obtained from the ancestral land from the universe ring. These 2 bloodstones were smaller than Hua Yan's, but their surface was round and smooth without cracks. In terms of appearance, they were much better. This, Hua Yan opened her eyes slightly and was greatly surprised. She picked up one of them and looked at it carefully. Suddenly, she sensed the familiar sense of danger hidden in the stone. "There is more than one blood stone like this. Where did you get it?" Suli didn't deliberately hide it and said directly, "From an ancient secret place with a history of tens of thousands of years." Hua Yen subconsciously thought of the popular descendant of the Ghost clan in recent days, but she soon dispelled this idea. Although the time of Su Li's return was very coincidental, she was a real human clan with the strength of Huashan realm at most. It was impossible for her to be the descendant of the Ghost clan. It seems that the origin of this thing is more complicated than we thought. But I have carried it with me for 1,000 years, but I haven't figured out the use of this thing. It's a pity. Su Li's heart moved when she heard this. Whether it was Hua Yan's bloodstone or the 2 in her hand, the original owner was not a human clan. Maybe the blood of the human clan couldn't be activated? She was contemplating, and suddenly saw Hua Yan put the bloodstone in her hand and smiled a little playfully. "You have no reason to refuse now, right? It's time to return this thing to its original owner." Su Li also smiled. This time, she didn't refuse and put the bloodstone into her pocket. She happened to have some ideas to verify. The quality of this bloodstone was the worst and just right. Moreover, it was not safe to leave it in Hua Yan's hand. It was better to give it to Hua Yan after she finished studying it. Chapter 478. After Hua Yan left, Su Li called Yan Zai, Lvu, Dongfang Wushu and others. She gave them some cultivation treasures and assigned them individual tasks. Then she announced that she would practice in isolation. At the entrance of the forbidden area in the back mountain, Yan Zai, who was emaciated and sallow, had returned to the appearance of a handsome young man. Lvu still wore a green robe and looked old. He looked at Dongfang Wushue with a pair of cunning eyes and asked curiously, "Wushue, What did the master give you? Third brother, take it out and have a look. Yen Zai also echoed with a smile. During this time, the three of them worked for Su Li and worked together to manage the sect. They had already become familiar with each other. Yen Zai even proposed the idea of being sworn brothers. However, Lvu always felt that he was not talented enough and always disagreed. However, Yen Zai was familiar with Dongfang Wushue's address of third brother. Dongfang Wushue looked helpless. After his physical body was reconstructed, he still looked like a young man. He looked too young. At the same time, he did not forget to take out the elixirs that Su Li gave him and shook them. His tone was complicated and moved. 10 Tianjing elixirs. The spiritual power inside is easier to absorb than the celestial stone. I can restore my cultivation in less than 10 days. This kind of elixir. Even the Dongfang family may not have one. I don't know where the master got it. Indeed, even in the holy sect where I come from, this kind of elixir is absolutely a strategic resource and extremely rare. Yen Zai nodded in agreement and then showed 5 Wujing elixirs. With the help of these elixirs, I will definitely break through the bottleneck and reach Huashan realm within half a year. Mister, he couldn't have robbed a holy sect, right? Don't joke. I think the master got an inheritance similar to Tsang Lei's cave. Ha ha ha, that's true. Lvu looked at them enviously and laughed. He looked at the Poying elixir in his hand. Although this elixir was the least valuable among the three, it was what he needed most now. And he had every reason to believe that when he reached the bottleneck of Yuanying realm, as long as his contribution was enough, he would inevitably get the help of Wujing elixir. He held the elixir in his hand and was thrilled. Once again, he was extremely glad that he made the right decision. From that moment on, his fate was completely different. After talking and laughing, the three left respectively. They all had their own tasks to complete. Since Su Li asked them alone, they would not disclose it to anyone or ask. Although Su Li told Yen Zai and others to practice in isolation was a cover, it still took her 3 days to refine the external incarnation of the Ghost Clan. It was relatively easy to refine the outer body incarnation of the Ghost Clan. After several failures and familiarizing herself with the technique, her success rate soon reached 100%. She also took the time to study the bloodstone in between. With this research, they really did find some clues. In the addendum, there were 20 rows of external incarnations neatly leaning against the wall. Their faces were the same as Su Li's, which was quite frightening at first glance. At this moment, Su Li's attention was not on it, but on the blood-colored crystal in the hands of the evil ghost. At this time, the blood-colored crystal stone was emitting a dazzling light. There was a blood-colored mist around the crystal stone, which was constantly drilling into his body through the shadow of the evil ghost. Su Li's eyes were extremely bright. She was not a pure member of the primordial ghost clan, but the evil ghost had absorbed the souls of countless ghosts, so it was purer than her own body. Since the blood of the human clan had no effect on the blood crystal, she tried to let the evil ghost control the blood crystal. This control was a direct success. When a certain amount of the bloody mist poured in, Su Li saw that the fist-sized bloody crystal became smaller. At the same time, an instinct arose from the bottom of her heart. Boom! The scorching blood and pneuma gushed out, and the temperature of the whole addendum rose instantly. Su Li only felt that the pneuma and blood in her body were boiling, as if she had inexhaustible strength. My strength has improved by at least 50%. After a rough sensing, Su Li smiled. Her physical body was extremely strong, and it was nothing to burn this pneuma and blood. She could make up for it in a few breaths. It's a pity that there are too few bloodstones. Su Li took back the bloodstone in the hands of the evil ghost, shook her head and smiled. It was a pleasant surprise that she could solve the secret of the bloodstone before she went to Zisha's appointment. She was a little greedy. Thinking of this, she narrowed her eyes slightly and waved her sleeves. All external incarnations in the addendum automatically flew into the universe ring. She wiped the ring with her palm, and a delicate communication jade rune flashed out. Su Li stared at the shining Su character carved on it. Her gentle eyes suddenly became cold, and she slightly exerted force in her hand. The jade rune was crushed. At the same time, in the noble grand palace of the Su family far away, Suchinka, who was meditating, suddenly shivered and opened his eyes. His eyes were blank for a moment, and then they became gloomy. He got up and flew out of the palace to the huge palace at the highest point of the mountains. Only halfway, he heard a low and old voice in his ear. Chunka, have you finally figured out how to explain the matter of the second branch of the Su family? Suchinka's figure stagnated, and then he landed in front of the palace gate. He bowed submissively and said, "Brother, I didn't deliberately conceal it. There is indeed something in this matter. Now the time has come, and it's time for you to take action." At this moment, he heard a laugh beside his ear, and the palace doors opened on their own without a sound. "I'd like to see what you can say." Suchinka's eyes flashed, and he stepped into the palace. After a while, he saw his brother, who was hundreds of times stronger than him, and the pillar of the Su family, Su Zhuanyan. Su Zhuanyan was 900 years older than Suchinka, but his face was much younger than Suchinka. He seemed to be in his 30s. His face was gentle and elegant, like a scholar who was well-read. Suchinka didn't dare to be disrespectful to him. He came over and saluted first, and then he said, "Brother, I don't need to say more about the matter of the second branch of the Su family. You have almost understood it." Su Zhuanyan narrowed his eyes, looked at his biological brother, nodded gently, and said in a leisurely tone, "First, the demon crystal disappeared. You didn't continue to chase it, but went to the second branch. Su Dingchuan abandoned Su Dingxian inexplicably and supported Su Dayin. Even you showed kindness to Su Dayin, but you didn't ask for any benefits. This is not like you. If you and I were not born of the same mother, and your soul breath was still familiar to me, I would really think that you were replaced by an evil spirit." After that, his eyes flashed and his doubts grew stronger. Suchinka frowned and showed a sad expression. He said with grievance, "Brother, I did all this for the Su family. How can you doubt me so much?" Su Zhuanyan raised his eyebrows. Suchinka didn't wait for him to speak, and said with a little excitement, "Brother's doubts are actually the same thing. I received a message from Su Dayin that day and went to the Black Stone Forest, but the demon crystal had disappeared strangely. I was very angry at that time and ordered Su Jinan to investigate it. Then I promised Su Dayin to go to the second branch to mediate the contradiction between her and Su Dingxian. Who knows? I accidentally found a big secret." Speaking of this, Suchinka subconsciously lowered his voice, and his eyes flashed. "In the Black Stone Forest, there is a big demon born from heaven and earth." As soon as this was said, Su Zhuanyan, who had always been calm, finally changed his face. He said coldly, "How dare you lie to me? An ice demon has just appeared in the ghost region. How can another big demon appear in a short time? And every time a big demon is born, there must be a vision. How can I not receive the news?" Suchinka didn't panic when he heard this. Instead, he smiled and said, "Brother, I didn't say that the big demon was just born, huh?" Su Zhuanyan sat up straight, and his expression suddenly eased. "Tell me in detail." If Suchinka really lied, Su Zhuanyan would have panicked a long time ago. He could continue to stare at the pressure and continue to speak. Su Zhuanyan finally believed him a little. The remaining 90% depended on what Suchinka said. However, how could there be loopholes in Su Li's carefully woven trap? At the moment, Suchinka looked refreshed and immediately said, "When I went to the second branch, I felt that Su Dayan's new disciple, Su Jiuzhou, was fearless and had a strange attitude. So I paid more attention to her. After a few days of secret investigation, I found that she colluded with a big demon in the Black Stone Forest. After I searched Su Jojo's soul, I knew that the big demon was a demon snake that had lived for many years, and it was a natural big demon. It had never been envied by natural law in these years of cultivation, but the big demon was about to slough today. Brother, you naturally know what it means. Suchinka clenched his fists heavily, and his eyes were full of excitement and fanaticism, as if what he said was his personal experience. Su Zhuanyan's eyebrows and eyes jumped slightly. Snake slew. After the big demon snake slew, its strength must be greatly increased, and it is no longer protected by natural law. There must be a thunder test. He talked to himself, and suddenly remembered that there was a short thunder test in the Black Stone Forest a few days ago, but it didn't strike anything, only a group of casual practitioners were killed. It was true. What Suchinka said was all true. If some words were said, it would feel fake. But Suchinka said half of a sentence, and Su Zhuanyan linked all kinds of traces together, immediately convinced him. At this moment, his heart, which had been silent for thousands of years, beat violently. He didn't count on the big demon ghost region, but this big demon was obviously stronger and more powerful. If he could get it and use it as medicine, maybe he could become a junior emperor. Thinking of this, he suddenly looked at Suchinka. As soon as he spoke, his tone changed. How long before the snake slew? Su Zhuanyan stood up. Suchinka laughed. I don't know, but Su Jojo is the stove made by the big demon to resist nature's test. As long as we follow Su Jojo, we will have a bright future. It's normal that you don't know the time of the snake slew. Su Zhuanyan nodded and suddenly frowned and said angrily, Bastard! You hide such an important thing and don't report it. If you fail to kill the demon because of insufficient preparation time, I will punish you. After that, Su Zhuanyan flicked his sleeves and left in a hurry. Suchinka shrank his neck and waited until Su Zhuanyan's pneuma completely disappeared in his perception. He raised his head and laughed nervously. I've never broken the agreement between us, and I've never told anyone about you. Haha, I naturally know what you have done. Otherwise, do you think you can still come in front of me alive? In the end, Zisha's soft tones suddenly became cold. Su Li tightened her body slightly and snorted, Don't talk nonsense. I'm here as promised. I will only help you stall for a quarter of an hour. If the abnormal phenomenon attracts others, I won't be blamed. That's natural. Since you are ready to accept nature's punishment, then, as you wish. Before she finished her words, the calm lake in Su Li's sight immediately rippled. At first, it was like a breeze blowing, but as time went by, the wind gradually raged. The slight ripple was immediately pushed by an unknown force into a stormy wave, which turned into a waterspout and rushed to the sky. Whoosh! The broken water splashed into raindrops and poured down. Su Li stared at the water vortex without blinking. Her pupils slowly contracted, and the fear grew stronger. Suddenly, whoosh! 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 Countless serpent men turned into a ray of light, circling around the water column and going against the current. The densely packed serpent men writhed madly and hissed at the sky. If it was an ordinary cultivator, just seeing this scene was enough to scare them to the point of fainting. It has begun. Outside the barren forest, Su Zhuanyan saw the waterspout into the sky, and his eyes were full of horror. If he still had a 90% guess before, at this moment he saw it with his own eyes. There was no doubt in his heart. He thought quickly about how to kill the demon with the least cost. Boom! The snake-shaped thunderbolt flashed, and the sky suddenly became dark. It was so dark that one could not see his fingers. The thunderbolt flashed for a moment, and 1/10 of the snakes were chopped into pieces of minced meat. Blood rained. Su Li stood on the shore and looked up at the apocalyptic scene in the distance quietly. She let the blood fall on her face and be washed clean by the rain. The cycle was endless. What a big thundercloud! Even the sky is completely covered. Su Chenka and Su Zhuanyan stood in the distance with horror in their eyes. At this moment, although their cultivations were in different realms, their thoughts were very consistent. Su Jiuzhou, do it! But at this moment there was a roar full of anger in the barren forest. It was completely different from the gentle female voice before. Instead, it was like the voice of countless men and women mixed together, which made Su Zhuanyan's hair stand on end. Even if the strength of this mighty demon dropped sharply during the snake slew, would he be her opponent? But the thought of retreating only flashed in his mind for a moment, and it was completely overwhelmed by the huge benefits of killing the demon queen. Kill at all costs. Su Li was wet all over and her face was cold. She looked at the lake with a pale red color because 80% of the snakes were dead, and said unhurriedly, "What are you afraid of? The snakes are not dead yet. I will only help you for a quarter of an hour. If I make a move too early and you can't make it, what should I do if you drag me to death?" While saying this, Su Li retreated without a trace, and immediately felt that she was locked by an extremely dangerous thought, as if as long as she took another step back, she would face an overwhelming terrorist attack. "If you escape, you will die now." The sharp tone was mixed with countless sounds, which made Su Li's eardrums hurt. She no longer retreated, but turned around and flew to the water spout. The pressure on her body suddenly lightened. But she was not relaxed for a long time, and she was stared at by another more terrifying pressure. Boom! The dark clouds suddenly tumbled violently. Before Su Li's flying knife and waterspout, a bucket-thick purple thunderbolt fell. The power of this thunderbolt was more than twice as powerful as the one that struck Zisha's head before. "I can't bear it." Su Li's face changed slightly. Without saying anything, she took out the tactical matrix for camouflage modified by Zisha's demon crystal and opened it. The purple thunderbolt struck on the protective shield of the tactical matrix, and a strong purple light appeared. The whole tactical matrix creaked, as if it would explode in the next moment. However, the tactical matrix still held. Su Li breathed a sigh of relief, but Zisha's exasperated and frightened voice came from under her feet. "This is the Purple Emperor's Supreme Thunder? What kind of monster are you? Bastard, my thunder for punishment." Su Li didn't know what the Purple Emperor's Supreme Thunder was, but she also saw that the black cloud generated because of her gradually merged with Zisha's tribulation cloud. In the end, the tribulation cloud, which was originally flashing with blue electric arcs, was full of breathtaking purple. The terrifying power of destruction was brewing in the overwhelming thunder for punishment. Su Li looked at the core of the tactical matrix that was cracked into several halves in her hand. This tactical matrix for camouflage that had accompanied her for a year finally died of old age and could no longer be used. How to block the next blow? She looked up at the electric arcs and the thunder gathering. Her eyebrows almost knitted together. She couldn't escape forever, but at this moment, nature's punishment was obviously not going to give her a chance to think. After 3 breaths, boom! The purple thunder slanted down and drowned Su Li in the blink of an eye. It went straight into the water, and the lake crackled continuously. It instantly became a pool of thunder. Although Zisha hid in the depths of the lake, half of her body was still numb because of the purple thunder and lightning. "Su Jiuzhou, damn you!" Zisha gritted her teeth, moved her body with hatred, and stared at the purple sky. She never dreamed that Su Jiuzhou, the person who was jealous of by heaven, had a higher potential than her, so she attracted a more powerful thunder for punishment. The means she prepared were not enough to deal with it. But now it was too late to say anything. Su Jiuzhou had been smashed into flying ashes, and even her ashes were scattered with the wind. Where could she go to take revenge? Suddenly, the rolling purple thunder in the sky quickly faded and became the original blue, and even the blue was much lighter than before. Zisha was stunned and immediately overjoyed. Insufficient nimbus. Insufficient nimbus. The nimbus in this area was too thin, and the natural law had no time to mobilize too much nimbus to turn into thunder in a short time. The blow that killed Su Jiuzhou just now was too strong, which directly led to the decline of her thunder power. Ah! Su Jiuzhou! Zisha couldn't help laughing excitedly. Her delicate face suddenly twisted and turned into a huge snake head. Only the pair of purple eyes still glowed with the familiar feeling. Whoosh! The red lake water overflowed to the shore, and Zisha rushed out of the water. Her body finally appeared. Her head was held high, and her body full of strange patterns and scales convulsed. Layers of skin fell into the lake. She didn't need to treat the thunder for punishment, whose power was reduced by 1 level. Dark clouds rolled, boom, boom. More than a dozen thunderbolts struck down one after another. The snake scales were flying and the blood was dripping. Zisha's roar constantly echoed in the lake. Although the thunder for punishment was no longer a concern, she had reached the end of her snake shedding at this moment, which was the weakest time. Although the thunder for punishment could not hurt her seriously, it still brought her some pain. The dark sky gradually became clear, and the dark clouds dispersed. Until the last thunderbolt fell, there was no abnormality. Zisha was finally relieved. She looked up and enjoyed the long-lost warm sunshine. Suddenly, a golden light shuttled through quickly. The exposed flesh of Zisha's snake body was drilled, and a blood hole as big as a washbasin appeared. Hiss! The sharp pain attacked her nerves. Zisha raised her head and roared. She opened her bloody mouth to bite the golden light, but the speed of the golden light accelerated again. It narrowly escaped being bitten by Zisha. The blood was rolling, and Zisha quickly coiled up. Her snake eyes stared at the golden light going away. Finally, it fell beside an elegant scholar with a smile and turned into a golden mummy. It seems that I came at the right time. Chapter 480. The Corpse Control Method of the Corpse Refining School? Zisha's huge snake head was raised high. She looked down at Su Zhuanyan with a gloomy gaze. It turns out to be the little bastard of the Su family. Su Zhuanyan suddenly stretched out his hand, and the golden corpse immediately turned into an afterimage. The second half of Zisha's sentence was directly strangled in her throat. Although you are a mighty demon who has lived for countless years, but this trick of delaying time is too low-end. Not to mention me, any practitioner with a little bit of insight can easily see the flaws. Su Zhuanyan's tone was neither fast nor slow, but his 10 fingers moved flexibly and turned into an afterimage. On each fingertip there was a transparent silk thread that spread to the nothingness. Every time the silk thread trembled, the golden corpse dodged every attack of Zisha like a living person and looked for a gap to leave a wound on the snake's body. The pale red lake water smelled fishy, and the color became more and more intense. The giant snake roared and was furious, but it had no way to deal with the golden corpse. The minor injuries on its body gradually evolved into serious injuries over time. Zisha thought that her speed was not slow, but the speed of the golden corpse was obviously faster. It was so fast that it even exceeded the limit of nature's test and reached the extreme of Deshang realm. Su Zhuanyan himself only had the cultivation of the early stage of nature's test. It was all because of the golden corpse. Hiss! Roar! Human clan, damn it! Her eyes, which were as huge as copper tombs, reflected a monstrous fury. She twisted her body and slapped the lake water, raising a huge wall of water. In the next instant, a golden light flashed, and the wall of water was neatly cut into 8 pieces and fell into the lake. The mighty demon can't hold on any longer. If Su Zhuanyan succeeds, why hasn't the master appeared yet? Outside the forest, Su Chenka saw this scene worriedly. He was so anxious that he wanted to rush into the forest. Suddenly, a white and slender hand gently rested on his shoulder. Suchinka's scalp was numb, and he subconsciously wanted to fight back to defend himself. But when he saw the appearance of Su Jiuzhou next to him, he suddenly felt relieved. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, "Master, don't worry, it's not time yet." Su Li waved her hand and calmly looked at the mythical battle scene in the distance. She said with a smile, "Although your brother has the golden-armored corpse refined by the holy method of the sect, he underestimates the mighty demon who has lived for countless years." Suchinka was shocked and his face changed. "Sir, you mean boom?" Before he could open his mouth, an explosion suddenly sounded in his ears, followed by a violent hurricane that swept through the entire forest. Countless towering trees were snapped in half and swept into the sky by the violent wind. At this time, a figure flew out of the forest and turned into a stream of light, shooting straight at Suchinka's feet. Puff! Suchinka's pupils suddenly contracted. He only saw that the golden corpse bombarded the mountain rock, which was not hard, but it was smashed like a rotten tomato. Seeing the destructive state of the golden corpse, Suchinka had an inopportune thought in his mind. So our Su family's trump card, the holy corpse, is black inside. With a shudder, he looked up and saw the ripples reflected in the nothingness. A pair of smooth feet stepped in the high sky of the forest. Every time she took a step, the distance under her feet would instantly shorten by hundreds of meters. Supernatural power, shrinking distance. Suchinka looked at the sky in horror. He turned his head and was about to say something to Su Li, but he found that Su Li had already disappeared in place. Su Zhuanyan fled desperately with his sword in horror. The blood in his mouth kept gushing out as if it was free. "Giggle! Little guy, didn't you fight very happily just now? Why are you running?" Hearing the charming voice behind him, Su Zhuanyan patted his chest fiercely without saying a word. He spat out a big mouthful of blood into the flying sword, and the speed was faster. Just now, he controlled the golden corpse and finally killed the giant snake, but he didn't expect that a pair of hands suddenly stretched out from the ordinary nothingness. With just a gentle slap, his life-bonded golden corpse, which he had spent thousands of years to refine, was turned into a pile of minced meat. If this slap happened to him, just thinking about it, Su Zhuanyan shuddered. The culprit who made this slap was chasing him at the moment. "Senior, I didn't mean to offend you. I was also deceived by others, so I did such a disrespectful thing to you. If he died this time, everything he had cultivated for thousands of years would be gone." He transmitted the sound in fear. At this moment, the dignity of the old ancestor of the Su family was all left behind. "As long as Senior is willing to spare my life, I will definitely catch the messenger in front of you, cut him into pieces, and torture him to death. This Junior is even more willing to be your servant, to worship you for generations to come, to respect you as my lord." As soon as he finished speaking, the coquettish and beautiful face behind him suddenly opened her mouth. The small cherry mouth instantly cracked to the ears, and it expanded dozens of times in the wind. She swallowed Su Zhuanyan in one gulp. Crack, crack, crack. After a chewing sound that made people's teeth ache, Zisha's pale face finally recovered a little ruddy, and her mind was slightly relaxed. The counterattack just now was not easy for her. Fortunately, Su Zhuanyan did not escape too far, otherwise, Zisha took a deep look at the direction of Leiyuan's sect, which was the nearest to the Su family, and turned around to return. Suddenly, Zisha's footsteps stopped. She looked down and saw the bloody palm inserted in her chest. Her face changed wildly, and she opened her mouth to spit red blood. She didn't care that her heart was pulled out by the hand, and she flashed back. When she saw the person behind her, her face was completely gloomy. Su Jiuzhou. Her thoughts turned very fast. At the moment when Su Li appeared, she figured out the ins and outs. Xia was actually schemed by this weak human? Puff. Su Li stretched out her hand and pulled hard. After breaking the blood vessels connected to the heart, She sent them to Black Lotus Ring for sealing. After finishing this step, Suli looked up at Zisha, who looked paler, and said with a smile, "Senior, it's impolite not to reciprocate. Since you are not ready to let me live, if I show mercy, won't I look down on you?" Zisha stared at Suli as if she knew her for the first time. Her eyes were no longer coercion and contempt, but equality. "Sujojo." She calmed down, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, "You are a smart person. You should understand that my means can't be forced by Suzhuanyan. Why do you and I have a life-and-death struggle? I deceived you, and you also got my heart, which caused my strength to be greatly reduced. In this way you and I are even. I make a demon oath that I will not seek revenge from you after this disaster, and you will not plot against me again. How about it?" Suli bowed her head and pondered for a moment. She raised her head and smiled warmly. There was no murderous intention on her face. "Senior Zisha, I have to say that your proposal is very tempting." Zisha was slightly relieved, but before she spoke, her face suddenly changed, and she looked in the direction of the lake. "A newborn great demon." But Suli gently approached Zisha. As she moved her fingers, golden thunderbolts appeared out of thin air, which instantly turned into a cage and enveloped Zisha. "I still have a little guy to feed. If you can give up your flesh and blood, we are even." Zisha's eyes suddenly turned red. That was the essence she had accumulated for thousands of years. It was her foundation. If it was swallowed, she could not survive at all. "You are going too far." Zisha's face was ferocious. She reached out to grab the golden thunderbolt. When her palm touched the holy thunder, it was immediately burned with a sizzling sound. But she didn't seem to feel it. As she screamed, she turned into a pocket-sized snake body, and her tail slammed on the thunder cage. The booming sound resounded through the sky. A small part of the golden cage collapsed, and a purple light pierced Su Li's chest like lightning. Crack! The sound of glass breaking rang in her ears. At the same time, the purple light also seemed to be repelled by an unknown force. It turned back to its original body with bruises all over. Suli was stunned, and then she was horrified. She took out the life-saving magic ball that she got from Suchinka in her arms, and then saw that the round magic ball suddenly had countless cracks and collapsed into nothingness. "The law of universe, haha, even the heaven is helping you." Zisha laughed miserably when she saw the broken magic ball. "No, the heaven will only hope that I die early," Suli replied faintly. Even if Zisha was an arrow at the end of its flight, she only replenished the thunder cage from a distance. In front of a desperate situation, Zisha calmed down. She stared at Suli, who was always as calm as ice, and her hair fluttered wildly. "I am not wrong. This is the way of the world. I don't want to kill people, but they want to kill me all the time. Fortunately, I will kill enough. You human clan are all greedy and selfish people. I am defeated. I am defeated. I have nothing to say. I can see that you and I are the same kind of people. One day you will be schemed to death by others like me." Ha 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 ha. Golden thunderbolts struck down and smashed Zisha's body into a piece of charcoal, but it didn't stop. Suli looked at Zisha quietly and said. She laughed wildly and was desperate until there was no vitality. She kept silent. She was terribly calm. After a while, she suddenly said, "Zisha, it's useless to pretend to be dead." After the voice, there was no movement. Suli narrowed her eyes slightly. She simply removed the cage and approached Zisha. "Master, don't." Black Lotus's heart tightened. He saw the heart in the ring space suddenly beat slightly. Before he had time to remind Suli, the pitch-black corpse suddenly split into hundreds of thousands of small snakes. They opened their mouths and showed their sharp teeth to bite Suli. Suli grinned. "I know you can't help it, will." Before she finished her words, an amazing chill came from behind. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of thousands of small snakes were all frozen. Ah woo woo, the little white fox rushed out of Su Li's arms and broke the all-spirits jade rune on its body. A strong pneuma of a mighty demon came. At the same time, a statue of the little white fox next to the lake was broken. The ice demon had been hiding in Su Li's arms all the time. Whoosh! The ice flower was broken and condensed into Zisha's appearance again. But compared with Zisha before, she was more petite, and her face was pale and almost transparent. Cough! Zisha covered her chest and coughed. Blood spilled from the corner of her mouth. She looked at Su Li with amazement. I rarely admire human clan. You are very. Zisha suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a green poisonous fog, which instantly enveloped Su Li. Chapter 481. Master! Black Lotus Ring vibrated violently. His worry finally became a reality. The trick that Zisha used until now couldn't be ordinary snake venom. Could Su Li withstand it? Zisha's dim pupils had a glimmer of hope. As soon as the green poisonous mist appeared, it corroded the nothingness and corroded all Su Li's clothes into nothingness in the blink of an eye. But that was all. Su Li stood in the nothingness without any clothes. Her slender and white body was looming in the mist. Her white skin glowed in the green mist. Zisha held her breath. Useless? Is this your last resort? Su Li tilted her head and smiled. Her long hair danced in the wind like splashing ink. Such a beautiful picture was no different from a devil in her eyes. It's really disappointing, Su Li said. She twisted the wind with her fingertips and compressed the green poisonous mist into a ball. Then she sealed it in the bottle. Nice poison. I'll accept it. Zisha stared at Su Li in a daze. Countless scenes from her childhood flashed in her mind. The glory when the demon clan was established and the struggle when the demon clan was exiled flashed in her mind. Finally, a bitter and relieved smile appeared on her face. I lost. After that, her body disappeared with the wind. That ball of life-bound poison was all she had. Su Li looked at the green glass bottle in her hand. After a moment of silence, she took out a set of clothes from the universe ring and put them on. The little white fox cheered and rushed to the lake where Zisha's real body was. After swallowing Zisha's real body, it would inevitably grow rapidly in a short time and even transform. It was much easier for a born great demon to transform than a great demon from the demon clan. Master, you killed Zisha and turned the tide. Aren't you happy? Black Lotus felt a trace of emotion revealed by Su Li and couldn't help but ask cautiously. Happy? Should I be happy? Su Li murmured in a low voice. It seemed to be an answer, but it was more like she was saying it to herself. In order to survive, Zisha had to find an opportunity to shed her skin. In order to survive, she also had to kill Zisha to eliminate future troubles. She couldn't speak without being crazy. There was no absolute right or wrong in this world. She didn't hate Zisha. Now that Zisha died in her hands, there was nothing to be happy about. Worryless, Su Li called softly. Suddenly, a white shadow shot out from the lake and landed on her shoulder. Woo-woo? The little white fox's bright big eyes were full of ignorance and doubt, and it seemed to feel that Su Li's mood was not high. Su Li glanced at the empty lake and didn't know where the little white fox hid Zisha's body. She gently touched the little white fox's soft and furry head and flew away. Farewell, mister. On the ground, Suchinka knelt down and bowed deeply. His eyes were full of morbid fanaticism. Even a great demon could not escape the fate of death in the hands of its master. Suchinka, I swear to be loyal to master. Half a day later, Su Li returned to the adytum of the Forbidden Land in the back mountain of an ice sect, as if nothing had happened. The news of Su Zhuanyan's death did not spread. Only Suchinka knew it. It was easy for Suchinka to secretly become the only master of the Su family. Su Li didn't bother to pay attention to those trivial things. There was no doubt about Suchinka's loyalty. The only thing she needed to care about now was the effect of reincarnation mirror to suppress her pneuma. After all, after she came out of the ancestral land of the Ghost Clan, her strength was greatly improved, and the pneuma of the body of Evil Ghost was stronger. If reincarnation mirror could not completely cover her pneuma, the consequences would be very troublesome. For this reason, Suli specially spent time to do a test with her external incarnation. The disciples of Ni sect clearly felt that the thunder around the sect this month was very frequent. It was said to be a strange phenomenon from the sky, but there was no sign of any treasure appearing in the world. As time went by, no one cared about it anymore. Hua Yen, Yen Zai and others just felt strange, but they didn't think it was Suli. In their eyes, although Suli was powerful, she couldn't reach the level of nature's test. What's more, the flashing thunder outside was not like the thunder of nature's test. 3 months later, the Su family experienced a bloody purge and completely fell into the control of Suchinka. Su Li's test finally came out. In the forbidden land of the Back Mountain, Su Li stood on a bare mountain that had been struck by thunder for nature's test. Watching the last external incarnation being smashed in the thunder, she sighed softly. Reincarnation mirror was too broken. Even if the fragments snatched from Han's sect were completely digested, it didn't reach 10% completeness. The effect of shielding the natural law was extremely limited. For this reason, Suli had to find a way from the demon crystal left by Zisha. It took her 3 months to remake a matrix rune with the demon crystal that surpassed the 11th grade. The materials used were all the top grade of the grand secret of Han's sect. But the result of the test was just satisfactory. It allowed her to burst out 60% of her strength without being noticed by the natural law. If the release of strength exceeded 60%, the blue nature's test would quickly gather like a shark smelling the fish. If the release of strength exceeded 80%, the blue nature's test would turn into purple emperor extreme thunder as it did against Zisha. Suli had to send 1 or even 2 external incarnations to completely offset the nature's test. And if she completely burst out 100% of her strength, the purple thunder would turn into a black thunder snake that she had never seen before. The power of the thunder for nature's test was far greater than that of Purple Emperor Extreme Thunder. It reached a level that Suli couldn't understand at all. For this, Suli sacrificed 10 external incarnations. Master, even if you collected a lot of ghosts and souls in the ancestral land, you shouldn't waste them like this. Seeing Suli in silence, Black Lotus sighed. Those were the fine souls carefully collected by the Ghost Clan for hundreds of thousands of years. They were wasted like this. Suli glanced at Black Lotus and didn't speak. The waste of external incarnations was necessary. The plan she was going to implement next must be supported by strength. She couldn't count on the fragments of the ancestral land of the Ghost Clan to save her every time, or another mighty demon would disturb the order of the natural law so that she could take advantage of the loopholes. When the ancestral land of the Ghost Clan collapsed, she collected a lot of fragments and hid them in the space around her to reduce consumption. But she could feel that the power of those fragments of the world that had lost their core was fading rapidly with time. Maybe it would be completely ineffective in a few years. Every time she used it, it would accelerate the disappearance of the fragment. Moreover, in order to scare off the Grand Elder of Han's sect who chased after her last time, she had already used 90% of the fragments. She would be thankful if the remaining fragments could kill a senior of Deshang realm. Suli took a deep breath. The light in her eyes flowed, and her calculation became deeper. She understood it very well. Such strength and foundation were far from enough to fight against Yushu's sect. However, if the immortal tea plant died, her chances would undoubtedly be smaller. There was not much time left. Master, are you back? In the forest, the bell rang and Yen Zai's voice came into her ears. Suli collected her thoughts and disappeared in a flash. When she reappeared, she was already in front of Yen Zai. Yan Zai had long been accustomed to his master's mysterious way of appearing and disappearing. He immediately said respectfully, "Master, something happened to the second branch of the Su family. Suchinka has gone to deal with it." "What happened?" "Su Wenbing is dead." Yan Zai's voice was slightly low. Su Li suddenly raised her eyebrows. An hour later, in the lobby where the second branch of the Su family was located, the atmosphere was solemn. Ling Qinglan, Su Dain, Su Xianyun and others were all there. Su Li squatted down and lifted the white cloth on the ground. Su Wenbing's pale face came into view. There was not much panic on his face, but more relief and shame. She lifted the white cloth further, but she saw a mass of rotten flesh below his neck. It seemed that he was cut and smashed by extremely sharp golden air. His corpse was not intact. Su Li narrowed her eyes, put down the white cloth, stood up, and looked at Ling Qinglan. Ling Qinglan understood and shook his head regretfully. "I was careless." Jindao cult suddenly attacked Dain. If this guy didn't block the attack. Su Li glanced at Su Dain, who was pale and lost in thought while looking at Su Wenbing's corpse. Then she waved to Ling Qinglan, "Let's go out and talk." Ling Qinglan nodded and left with Su Li first. Although he had a strong intuition that Su Jiuzhou was Su Li every time, he could control his emotions and no longer leak them. "Tell me the ins and outs." Standing on the edge of the cliff, Ling Qinglan followed Su Li. When he heard the question, he said with a complicated expression, "Su Dain's origin is related to Jindao cult, and the master of Jindao cult wants to kill her as soon as possible. After Su Zhuanyan died, Jindao cult wanted to kill her. That's why there was such a thrill. I also found this out later. Before Su Wenbing died, he revealed that he was the illegitimate son of Su Dingxian." In the lobby, Su Dain took a deep breath, walked to the white cloth and squatted down. She stretched out her hand and touched the white cloth. Then she withdrew her hand as if she was electrocuted. Yesterday's events kept flashing in her mind. The golden blades were like flying flowers all over the sky, but they were all blocked by Su Wenbing behind him. Su Dain stared at Su Wenbing in a daze. Su Wenbing showed a painful look, but he was still smiling at her. His bloody hands grasped her tightly, and his voice was choked with sobs. "After my father asked me to worship you as my master, there was no news from me for hundreds of years. Master, I dare not forget your kindness. I thought I would never go back to that hell in my life, but I can't disobey my father's order. No matter how he treats me, he is still my father. Master, I'm sorry. I've done something wrong. I'm going to repent in hell. Master, take care. Silly boy. Su Dingxian is not worthy of your life. When did he treat you as his son? It's my fault. If I can find out." Su Dain's voice was hoarse and choked. Su Xianyun and Su Jing stood behind. Their eyes were red and moist, and they grasped the swords in their hands tightly. They didn't feel the pain of the third junior fellow apprentice before, but it was too late now. Step, step, step. Suddenly, footsteps sounded. Su Dain raised her head and saw Su Li and Ling Qinglan coming. She was confused, but Su Li suddenly smiled and said to her in a relaxed tone, "Su Dain, are you interested in being the master of Jindao cult?" Chapter 482. Although Jindao cult ranked at the bottom of the 25 sects, it was also one of the 25 sects, and its strength should not be underestimated. In the afternoon of the same day, Ling Qinglan secretly went to Jindao cult to investigate the situation, while Su Chenka stayed in the Su family to prevent the base camp from being invaded. "Master, are you going to deal with Jindao cult?" On the second day, Su Yang and Su Mu, who hadn't shown up for a long time, suddenly came. As soon as they met, Su Yang frowned and asked anxiously, "Why? Can't I?" Su Li looked at Su Yang and raised her eyebrows slightly. Pressure came out of nowhere. "Of course, master." Su Yang's forehead was sweating, and his doubts and anxiety were instantly replaced by a kind of emotion called cowardice. Su Mu saw Su Yang's unbearable look. He shook his head slightly and said, "Master, Tianhe sect sent a message to us yesterday, asking what happened in the Su family. The news of Su Zhuanyan's death seems to have spread." Su Li slightly pursed her lips and said lightly, "It's not surprising. After a few months, Su Chenka has made a lot of moves, and Jindao cult has been keeping an eye on it. If the news of Su Zhuanyan's death doesn't spread, I will feel strange." As soon as these words came out, both Su Yang and Su Mu were shocked. Su Zhuanyan really died in the hands of Su Jiuzhou. Even though the two of them had guessed it when Su Chenka cleared the Su family in a bloody way and deliberately let them go, they were still shocked when they heard the news. Although they had never been qualified to see Su Zhuanyan with their own eyes, he was also a mighty figure in nature's test. Even in Tianhe sect, he was definitely a mainstay. In the era of no war, few people died. Tut! Su Yang couldn't help but be speechless. A few months ago, a grand elder of Junior Emperor died in Han sect. Not long after, another mighty in nature's test died. Qin Shui Circle is really getting more and more chaotic. He sighed with emotion and asked cautiously, "Master, how should we reply to the inquiry of Tianhe sect?" Su Li looked at Su Yang until the latter's hair stood up. Then she turned her gaze and said indifferently, "Don't let any holy sects come to Zhouzhou region within 10 years." Su Yang's pupils shrank, and his heart trembled slightly. Although he wanted to ask Su Jiuzhou why she did this, his reason and desire to survive still stopped him. In the end, he just nodded. Su Mu frowned and said hesitantly, "Master, since Tianhe sect can send us to lurk in sects in Zhouzhou region, other holy sects are likely to place spies in other sections. If you want to deal with Jindao cult and don't want to spread the news, I'm afraid." Su Li was stunned for a moment. Then she gently nodded and said, "You are right. It seems that my plan needs to be changed. You two have been in Zhouzhou region for many years. Have you contacted other holy sects spies?" Su Yang's expression was slightly stiff. He subconsciously wanted to deny it, but Su Mu nodded and admitted it without hesitation, as if he was waiting for Su Li's question. "Very good." Su Li glanced at Su Yang, who looked uneasy, and revealed a meaningful smile. She said softly, "The matter of the Su family has been settled. You don't have to stay in the Su family anymore. In the next year, I don't care what you do, try to find out the specific identity of those spies and report it to me. Can you do it?" Su Mu's expression was solemn. He stood straight and his voice resounded. "I will live up to your expectations." "Ha!" Su Li laughed softly and waved her hand. Then her figure shattered and disappeared like a bubble. Blockhead. After Su Li left, Su Yang immediately wanted to ask, but Su Mu reached out to cover his mouth. Seeing Su Mu shook his head seriously, Su Yang was a little confused. He didn't understand why Su Mu had to listen to Su Jiuzhou. Obviously, it was not necessary. Although the two of them became traitors and joined Su Jiuzhou, it was just an expedient strategy to survive in the chaos zone. Did this blockhead take it seriously? "Let's go. Since Master said so, we will set off immediately." Su Mu glanced at the direction where Su Li left. He picked up Su Yang's back with one hand and left the second branch in a few flashes. Shortly after the two of them left, Su Chenka, who was hiding in the dark, appeared and calmly dispelled the gesture in his hand. Su Mu flew all the way with Su Yang until they landed on a flat plain. With a gloomy face, Su Yang broke away from Su Mu's hand and scolded angrily, "Blockhead, have you been kicked in the head by a donkey? You even told Su Jiuzhou about your past. What kind of magic potion did Su Jiuzhou give you to make you answer every question? If she asks about us, are you going to—" "Shut up." The anger in Su Mu's eyes flashed away, and he stopped Su Yang from saying the second half of the sentence. "Well, I'd like to hear what reason you can make up this time to convince me." Su Yang took a deep breath, crossed his hands in front of his chest, and stared at Su Mu with bulging eyes. It seemed that he would part ways if Su Mu didn't agree with him. Su Jiuzhou wants to unify the Jiuzhou region. Su Mu's eyes flickered, and the first sentence made Su Yang's expression change dramatically. What? Su Mu raised his head and squinted at Su Yang. She doesn't mean to deliberately hide it from us, but she wants to hide it from holy sects. If we want to leave, we can imagine the consequences. Su Yang reached out to cover his chest, which was faintly suffocating, and his face was full of disbelief. How is this possible? Su Jiuzhou's Zenai sect is just a small sect. Based on those repulsive people, now the Su family also belongs to Su Jiuzhou. Su Mu interjected leisurely, and Su Yang suddenly stopped talking. Even if Su Jiuzhou's next goal is Jindao cult, how do you know that she wants to control the Jiuzhou region? Maybe she just wants to avenge Su Dain. After all, her relationship with Su Dain. Speaking of this, Su Yang froze and his voice stopped abruptly. He suddenly remembered that the relationship between Su Jiuzhou and Su Dain was simply planned by Su Jiuzhou. Could there be feelings in such a relationship? Seeing that he finally understood, Su Mu continued, "If we refuse, Su Chenko will immediately kill us in the cradle. Maybe she won't kill in order not to alarm Tianhe's sect, but do you want to be like Su Chenka?" Su Yang couldn't help but shiver and immediately shook his head. "So we have no choice. It turns out to be like this." Su Yang looked at the Jinwu in the sky, which was not very bright, and suddenly turned back with a pale smile. "Su Mu, my brain is really not as good as yours. Do you particularly dislike me? If not." Su Mu's cold face showed a slight fluctuation, but it soon calmed down, just like a leaf thrown into a calm lake, which only caused a ripple. But there was something more in the lake after all. "I never dislike you. I just want to kill you. So, the stupider you are, the better." After Su Mu finished speaking, he turned around and left. Su Yang laughed, "So? I'm relieved." Hearing him laughing behind, Su Mu raised his lips imperceptibly, but it was soon replaced by coldness. There was one more thing that he hid from Su Yang. Although it was his guess, he dared not tell anyone. The will of ice that he understood was extremely sensitive to some things, such as the ice demon that made a big scene in the ghost region, on a green grassland by the lake in the back mountain of an ice sect. Su Li lay down and stared at the blue sky in a daze. The little white fox squinted and took a nap beside her. It made a murmur from time to time, as if it was dreaming. The little black cat, which was transformed by the nightmare, stared at the little white fox and kept devouring dreams with a satisfied face. It enjoyed itself very much. Su Li suddenly felt a little sleepy when the warm but indescribable sunshine shone on her. With her physique, she would definitely not be affected by the light, but she was intoxicated by herself. These days, she broke into the ghost region, entered the ancestral land of the Ghost Clan, and killed the Grand Elder of Han sect and the mighty demon Zi Sha. Although she gained a lot, she was too nervous. She needed to rest before fighting against the 25 sections. Even if it was only for a moment. She squinted and looked at the lush mountains, rivers and forests in the distance, and gradually fell asleep. After a long time, the approaching breath of Hua Yan woke her up. Didn't she dream? She straightened up and looked at the innocent nightmare beside her. She looked slightly serious. "Black, you are a good girl, right?" The little body of the nightmare shivered. It opened its mouth aggrievedly and spat out a ball. Su Li took the dream ball with a smile. This little guy became bold and even dared to devour her dream? "Su Li, you are here. I have been looking for you for a long time." At this moment, Hua Yan came in a hurry, and her breath was a little unstable. When she saw Su Li lying comfortably on the grass, she couldn't help but be amused. She pretended to be angry and said, "Wow! I am running around for you outside, but you are lazing around here." After a while, Hua Yan's smile disappeared, but there was still a smile in her eyes. The spy of Jindao cult has news. Oh, so fast? Su Li said in surprise. She originally thought that if she couldn't find the spy in Jindao cult, she would go to Jindao cult in person, but now it was not necessary. Yes. Hua Yin nodded and said, "It's a coincidence that the spy in Jindao cult has some relationship with Yen Zai." Yen Zai went to investigate a little and recognized the person. Is he from Void Sword Sect? Su Li rubbed the surface of Black Lotus Ring and thought about it. In the previous life, she died very cleanly, and the reincarnation mirror had been completely destroyed. Why did those holy sects still put spies in these small sects? Was it possible that someone already knew that she was still alive? As soon as this speculation appeared, Su Li shook her head and extinguished it. It was impossible. If they knew that she was reborn, they would not be so calm now. That is, someone predicted that something noteworthy would happen in Jiuzhou region, but they didn't know it was me. Or could it be that the thing that people care about isn't me? All kinds of thoughts hovered in Su Li's mind. Hua Yin stood aside and did not disturb her. Instead, she looked at Su Li's beautiful face in contemplation with a smile on her face. If she could, she would rather practice quietly with Su Li all the time, but she also knew very well that it was impossible. It was too unfair for Su Li to give up hatred. Chapter 483. Senior Fellow Apprentice Yen, it's really you. In an inn in a small cultivation town at the foot of the Jindao cult, Yen Shixuan looked at Yen Zai with surprise in his eyes. He had lurked in the Jindao cult for thousands of years. As a price, the Void Sword sect also let him enter the reincarnation mirror and got a good opportunity. But after all, he was not a genius cultivated by the Void Sword sect. On the day when the reincarnation mirror was broken, no one saved him. All the memories of what happened in the reincarnation mirror had long disappeared, and only some mental methods he learned in the reincarnation mirror were left in his mind. Naturally, he didn't remember that the role he played in the reincarnation mirror would be Yen Zai's father, the governor of Dahan country and the governor of Qinghe province. He only remembered that Yen Zai was famous and talented in the Void Sword sect. As long as it was a disciple in the sect, there was not a single one who did not admire him. He was even sure that Yen Zai would be the next sect master. But no one expected that Yen Zai disappeared soon after he came back from the reincarnation mirror. Yen Zai saw Yen Shixuan's surprised expression, and his expression was quite strange. Although he knew that many things happened in the reincarnation mirror were illusions, he still couldn't ignore it. "Senior fellow apprentice, where have you been all these years?" Yen Shixuan looked at Yen Zai as if he had found someone to talk to. His aloofness as an elder of the Jindao cult all turned into loneliness. "I haven't returned to the sect for hundreds of years. I don't know if my old friends still remember me." Yen Zai's eyes flashed, and he didn't answer his words. He said slowly, "In the eyes of those friends, you died 1,000 years ago." "What?" Yen Shixuan's mind suddenly shook, and his pupils shrank. "Why?" Yen Zai shook his head and smiled self-mockingly. "For the sect, what are we? Even if it's me, if I can't become a junior emperor, I'm just a tool that can be thrown away at will. These you have been cultivating for many years, and you should know. It turns out that it's like this." Yen Shixuan looked more lonely, and the brilliance in his eyes because of meeting Yen Zai disappeared at this moment. Yen Zai looked at Yen Shixuan in silence. Although he was suspected of instigating defection, what he said was the truth. Those who were sent out by the Void Sword sect as spies would not end up well. The various benefits promised by the sect were just an illusion. Those who could really get that huge reward were very few. For people like Yen Shixuan who had been wandering outside for thousands of years, the higher-ups of the sect had long since lost trust in them. Even if they occasionally obtained information from them, they would join forces with other spies to repeatedly verify its authenticity. He, Yen Shirshuan shook the wine glass in his hand and suddenly laughed in a low voice. His voice sounded like sand, extremely sour. In the cultivation world, favors are the most valuable, but also the least valuable. I'm afraid that those who still remember me, Yen Shirshuan, can be counted with one hand. When Yen Zai heard this, he knew it was time. He pretended to be hesitant and said, "Do you want to go back and take a look?" Yen Shirshuan was instantly stunned, and then his expression changed. "Senior brother, do you have a way?" Yen Zai nodded with a smile, but then shook his head. "My identity is sensitive, so it's not good for me to take you back. However, there is an opportunity right now. If you seize it, you may be able to break through the shackles of the Void Sword sect and get a brighter path of cultivation." Yen Shirshuan's face changed slightly. Senior brother. He was not a fool to be a spy in other sects for so many years without being discovered. The meaning of Yen Zai's words made him shudder. Betray the sect? Don't worry. Yen Zai pressed Yen Shirshuan's trembling hands. You and I have the same surname, and I won't hurt you. I won't let you risk doing anything. As long as you do your part, leave the rest to me, your senior brother. My part? Yen Shirshuan's eyes were full of hesitation, but Yen Zai was not annoyed. He smiled lightly and pointed to the Jindao school. It's easy for you. Yen Shirshuan looked at the gate of the Jindao school in a daze. He still did not understand, but he soon understood. Bang! A purple streamer fell from the sky and slammed into the big tactical matrix for the protection of the Jindao school. Until the plaque of the main hall of the Jindao school was smashed into pieces, the original shape was revealed, a purple dagger. What's that? The main hall of our sect was smashed. What? Senior fellow apprentice, come out quickly. Something big happened. A huge roar resounded through the mountains. The main hall was destroyed, and all the disciples of the Jindao school were rioting. Not long after, Jin Jintian, the master of the Jindao school, flew out of the main hall aggressively with all the elders. Who dares to be presumptuous in my Jindao school? As soon as he finished speaking, a sweet female voice with a sneer sounded. It's me. The wind was dancing in the nothingness, and Su Dian's skirt was rustling. Her phoenix eyes were as cold as a knife, and her face was cold. Ling Qinglan followed her silently, keeping a low profile. It's you. Seeing Su Dian, Jin Jintian's eyes changed. The moment he opened his mouth, the sound waves turned into illusory golden knives and slashed at the nothingness. Judging from his action, he actually wanted to kill Su Dian immediately so that she had no chance to speak. Su Dian was not panicked, but smiled. First uncle, are you so eager to let your niece die? While speaking, Ling Qinglan raised his head, revealing a plain face. He just took a step forward and waved his sleeve. Ding, 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 ding. Those incomparably sharp golden sabers were like eggs hitting a rock, collapsing one after another. Seeing this scene, both Jin Jintian and other elders of the Jindao school showed a look of horror. This person was definitely not in the Huashan realm. Didn't Jin Jintian say that after Su Zhuanyan, the Su family would have no backer? Why did a mighty in nature's test come out and protect Su Dian? For a time, the elders panicked, but only an old man in a dark gray robe frowned tightly. He stared at Jin Jintian and questioned, She called you first uncle. Is she Qing Ao's daughter? Jin Jintian looked at Ling Qinglan, who looked indifferent, and his forehead was sweating. When he heard the old man's question, his face became even more ugly. He braced himself and said, Uncle, don't listen to this demon girl's nonsense. If I have a daughter, how can I let her be stranded outside? Ho ho ho, seeing Jin Jintian's sophistry, Su Dian suddenly chuckled and said sarcastically, Old man, what first uncle said is right. After he learned that I was stranded outside, he couldn't wait to send someone with a knife to get close to me. You are the head of the second branch of the Su family, Su Dian. An elder didn't know the truth and recognized Su Dian's identity. He immediately shouted coldly, "Su Dain, do you forget that the 25 sects in the Jojo region can't kill each other? Otherwise, it will cause all sects to attack together." Jin Jintian was suddenly refreshed when he heard the words. He bowed to Ling Qinglan and said eloquently, "Senior, although I don't know what Su Dain promised you to make you help her like this, the iron law of the Jojo region can't be broken. If you insist on harming my sect, even with your cultivation, you will be doomed. Think twice." Jin Jintian said while observing Ling Qinglan's reaction, hoping to see some information from his face, but he was disappointed. Ling Qinglan was always expressionless, as if he didn't hear what he said. Su Dain saw that Jin Jintian was still struggling, and she couldn't help but laugh very happily. "I have been wandering outside since I was a child, fighting for food with wild dogs and clothes with beggars. If it weren't for my adoptive mother's kindness, there would be no Su Dain today. In recent days, there have been some changes in the Su family, which have nothing to do with my second branch. But I didn't expect that someone would take the opportunity to assassinate me. Thanks to this stab, I understand that my revenge has not been avenged. Jin Jintian, don't you want to get my father's practice method? I'll let you broaden your horizons." At the end of her words, Su Dain's face was suddenly full of killing intent. She pinched a gesture that made Ling Qinglan's face change abruptly. "Go to hell." Swish. 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 3 flying swords shot out from the universe ring and rushed to Jin Jintian. Jin Jintian immediately took out a bell-shaped magic weapon to block the flying swords, but his face was much worse than if he didn't block the swords. The AO sword skills that he had been looking for was actually in the hands of Su Dain, and it was exposed at this moment. AO sword skills of Qingao, this child. The elder in grey robe looked at Su Dain, who was full of killing intent. His lips trembled violently, and his old eyes were instantly wet. "My granddaughter is still alive. This is the AO sword skills of the former lord. She is really the daughter of the lord." Many elders who didn't know were also shocked. The AO sword skills was the trump card of the former lord. The sword moves were strange and unpredictable. Every time it was used, there would be blood. But since the inexplicable death of the former lord, this sword skills had also been lost. Although Jin Jintian was Jin Qing Ao's brother, he did not inherit this sword skills. No one knew where the sword skills went. But today there was finally an answer. And this answer was very unusual. For a time, many people looked at Jin Jintian in a strange way, and even many people distanced themselves from him and disassociated themselves from him. Others who did not disassociate themselves from Jin Jintian rolled their eyes and seemed to be looking for an escape route. Jin Jintian also wanted to escape, but the middle-aged man in linen with an ordinary face gave him too much pressure. He could barely resist the sword light that Su Dain constantly shot at him, but he could not take another step. However, even though he managed to defend the front, he was still able to release a cold sword beside him. Puff! The elder in grey robe fiercely inserted the flying sword into Jin Jintian's heart. His turbid old eyes were full of red, as if blood was about to drip out. "You killed my daughter and your brother. Bastard, give me your life." Jin Jintian's eyes widened and his blood splashed. He held the flying sword in his chest tightly, but the elder in grey robe put more strength in his hand. Su Dain saw the opportunity. She pointed with her fingertips, and a golden light broke the gap of the round bell and inserted into Jin Jintian's throat. Whoosh! Blood gushed out like a fountain. "Ho ho! I'm not reconciled." Jin Jintian covered his neck and his body softened. He never expected that his momentary greed would bear such a consequence. Chapter 484. Clatter. Ling Qinglan frowned and loosened the invisible bondage, letting Jin Jintian's corpse fall in the square in front of the main hall of Jindao cult. The disciples who heard the noise and came over saw the corpse of their lord. They instantly retreated far away, and formed a large circle around the corpse. It was silent. The old man in a grey robe didn't look at Jean Gentian. He trembled and walked to Su Dain. His wrinkled face was complicated. His lips were humming, but his voice was choked in his throat. He couldn't say anything. Uncle Lan, Su Dain looked at Ling Qinglan. Since she learned Ling Qinglan's real name last time, she naturally changed her address. Even though Ling Qinglan had thousands of doubts in his heart at the moment, the old man in a grey robe was Su Dain's grandfather. He didn't want to disturb his relatives when they met. Thinking of this, he retreated to the side with a heavy heart. He kept recalling the scene of Su Dain performing the AO sword skills just now. He was absent-minded, but he didn't find that Jean Gentian's corpse below suddenly trembled slightly. Then an invisible transparent soul rose from the corpse and turned into a flowing light. It flew out of the Jindao cult quietly. Porcelain method. It actually works. God doesn't want me to die. In the flight, Jean Gentian's consciousness woke up. Seeing the state at this time, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. As long as his soul was still there, it was possible to practice again. Su Dain, you wait for me. If I don't avenge this, I swear not to be a man. Jean Gentian's transparent face looked ferocious. He controlled the soul to fly into the air. At this moment, a pair of white hands suddenly appeared. They easily passed through the space and grabbed Jean Gentian's soul. Then they pinched it out. Green smoke curled up. Ah! The harsh scream echoed in her ears, but Su Li didn't seem to feel it. Jean Gentian and Jean Qing Ao are brothers. It turns out that the inheritance of the Ao sword skills I snatched in the reincarnation mirror is rooted here. Jean Qing Ao's daughter is under my command. Su Li showed a touch of interest. It was a coincidence, but it didn't surprise her. At that time, there were 100,000 practitioners who entered the reincarnation mirror. Although more than half of them died 1,000 years ago, those who stayed became the mainstay of various sections. As long as she wanted to get to the bottom of it, she would constantly meet those familiar but strange old friends, which was unavoidable. Jean Gentian and Jean Qing Ao were just the most ordinary ones among those people. However, the porcelain method mentioned by Jean Gentian aroused a little interest in her. Even though ordinary soul formation cultivators had formed their primordial spirits and were protected by the power of intent realm, their primordial spirits were still too weak compared to their physical bodies. If the physical body was destroyed, the primordial spirit would not be able to hide and would collapse along with the physical body. However, Jean Gentian was different. He could actually regenerate his soul from his primordial spirit and escape without anyone noticing. If it weren't for the fact that he was guarding outside and his divine sense had keenly sensed the fluctuation, perhaps Jean Gentian would have really escaped and escaped. Senior Ling, please bring back Jean Gentian's corpse. Ling Qinglan suddenly heard Su Li's voice transmission, and his thoughts were suddenly interrupted. He looked at Jean Gentian's corpse that was completely silent below and wondered why Su Li still wanted the corpse. But at this moment, he didn't have much time to think about it. He just fell down and took back the spiritual dagger that was smashed into the hall. Then he put Jean Gentian's corpse into the universe ring. This action immediately aroused the dissatisfaction of the people of Jindao cult. The old man in a grey robe immediately flew over and cupped his fists. Fellow practitioner, I am Mo Lin. I am Dian's grandfather. Thanks to your care and protection over the years, Dian can grow up safely. But let me be thick-skinned and say that although this beast makes me want to cut him into pieces, he is the former head of Jindao cult after all. If you collect his corpse— Ling Qinglan's eyes were cold, and Su Dian knew something was wrong. She quickly said, Uncle Lan, don't be impatient. My grandfather is also for the reputation of Jindao cult, so, seeing Su Dian, Ling Qinglan's expression eased a little, but his voice was still very cold. The corpse will be returned in a few days. I just collect it on behalf of Diane to pay tribute to her parents and Su Wenbing. At the same time, he transmitted the sound to Su Diane. Su Jiuzhou wants this corpse. I'm afraid there is something strange about it. Su Diane was stunned. She suddenly fell silent and stopped persuading. Mo Lin was old and shrewd, and he also saw some clues. His old face immediately eased, and he no longer insisted. In this case, it is reasonable. Fellow practitioner, you don't have to worry about it. He could see that it was absolutely impossible to ask this person to hand over Jin Jintian's corpse. He wanted the corpse back for the sake of the face of Jindao cult. Now Ling Qinglan could put down his pride to explain, which was a great show of respect. After all, this was a mighty practitioner in nature's test. Their Jindao cult didn't have one, and it had always been ranked at the bottom of the 25 sections. Now Su Diane decided to return to Jindao cult as the head of Jindao cult. Maybe he could still take advantage of her. Mo Lin's mind became active, and the more he thought about it, the brighter the future was. Jin Jintian died so well. Shishuan, as you can see, what happened in Jindao cult is just a family feud. What happened in the Jindao gate is just a family grudge. You only need to report it to the sect, and you won't be punished. In the square of the main hall below, Yan Zai said with a smile. Yan Shishuan looked at the sky above the sect in a daze. In just half a day, Jindao cult had changed, and even the head of the sect had changed. If Yan Zai didn't come to him, he might still think that things were as he saw, but now he seemed to see a huge whirlpool, and he was caught in it. Thinking that he had been struggling alone in Jindao cult all these years, and Void Sword sect had no intention to have any relationship with him, and even turned him into a dead man. He took a deep breath and looked at Yan Zai. Senior fellow apprentice, what do I need to pay attention to? Yan Zai suddenly smiled when he heard the words and pointed to Ling Qinglan. Su Diane recognized her ancestors and returned to the sect. Jin Jintian died in Mo Lin's sneak attack. As for this person, don't appear in your report. Of course, there is also me. Yan Shishuan felt cold in his heart. Senior fellow apprentice, for whom are you? Yan Zai's smile faded slightly. Do you really want to know? Yan Shishuan opened his mouth, but he couldn't say anything. In the past years, could anyone who went against the holy sects have a good end? Don't worry. There is still a long time. Think about it. Yan Zai saw his hesitation and immediately chuckled and patted him on the shoulder. This time, I will do you a little favor. If the sect investigates in the future, you can also blame it on negligence. Don't worry. Yan Shishuan breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this sentence, and nodded. A few days later, on the punishment platform of Jindao cult, heads rolled and blood stained the ground. Su Diane looked cold and ferocious, but her eyes were full of tears. These elders who had conspired with Jin Jintian to kill her parents were finally sent to the netherworld by her own hands. Half a month later, the storm of Jindao cult completely subsided under Su Li's deliberate control. Jindao cult also returned to the right track under the management of Su Diane. However, the news that Jindao cult changed its head quickly spread to the ears of every lord of the 25 sects as if it had wings. What's wrong with Jiuzhou region recently? First, the old grand elder of Su family died inexplicably, and then Jin Jintian also died unluckily. It's really unlucky. Tut-tut, these two facts can be summed up as one thing. Su Diane was originally a member of Jindao cult. If Jin Jintian hadn't been greedy, he wouldn't have suffered today. I think it's weird. It's not as simple as we think. Yes, we must send someone to investigate. How can there be so many conspiracies? Those holy sects are much more well-informed than us. Even they didn't take any action, so there must be nothing serious. Many high-level officials of the 25 sects insisted on their own opinions. Although most people felt that this matter didn't need to be concerned, Hua Yan clearly noticed that there were more spies in Su family and Jindao cult. Fortunately, Su Li had already told them not to make any big moves recently. After those spies were restless for dozens of days, their enthusiasm almost subsided and they left one after another. At this moment, in the adytum of the back mountain of Ni sect, Su Li closed a booklet made of unknown materials and was lost in thought. Then in the faint light she could vaguely see the words, Porcelain Method, printed on the booklet. This booklet was made of golden silk with a history of no more than 1,000 years. The escape method described in it should be based on the reincarnation mirror's natal porcelain. Burn Mushue's spiritual jade as a jade porcelain magic weapon and store a trace of soul in it. If one day she was killed, she could retain her soul and seek a chance of survival. Logically speaking, the soul guided by Mushue's spiritual jade couldn't be perceived by practitioners. But Su Li's divine awareness was too keen. Ordinary practitioners couldn't find it, but it didn't mean that she couldn't find it. What's more, the natal porcelain refined by Jin Jintian was not perfect. Mushue's spiritual jade was a rare treasure that could refine the second natal body. Perhaps the purity of the spiritual jade obtained by Jin Jintian could barely meet the refining requirements, and he couldn't refine the perfect natal porcelain at all. Speaking of spiritual jade, the Sueyu tactics I practiced has long reached a certain bottleneck. Since the awakening of my talent, the body of evil ghost deduced for several months, and then I learned that I need the help of spiritual jade. However, ordinary spiritual jade has no effect. Her eyes flashed, and she took out a map made of spirit beast skin. This thing was obtained from Jin Jintian's universe ring. It was marked with the word Mushue. Jin Jintian's Mushue spiritual jade should be obtained from here. Su Li was very familiar with the terrain of Jiuzhou region, and the map showed that it was not in Jiuzhou region. After thinking for a moment, Su Li put away the map and flew away from Ni sect. Yen, I'm going out to do something. I'll be back in a few days. When Hua Yen heard the voice in her ear, she helplessly put down the case in her hand. She rubbed her eyebrows with a headache and smiled bitterly. Su Li was so thorough that she didn't have to do anything. Shaking her head, she buried her head in the case again. The intelligence of the holy sect's spies in the 25 sects couldn't be sloppy at all. Just a few days after Su Li left, in Jindao cult, Su Dain sorted out the network of the sect. It was rare for her to sit quietly in the backyard for half a day. Suddenly, a breeze swept by. Ling Qinglan, who should be in the Su family, appeared outside the courtyard. Chapter 485. Uncle Lan. Su Dain got up to greet him and withdrew the servants who were guarding on the side from the courtyard. Since she used the AO sword skills to kill Jin Jintian that day, she keenly sensed that Uncle Lan's mood was not quite right. She was not surprised that Ling Qinglan came alone. Ling Qinglan saw that she withdrew the maids and walked into the courtyard. He waved his hand to set a soundproof bounded domain. It seems that you already know my intention. Su Dain nodded slightly and asked tentatively, is it related to my AO sword skills? Where did you get this practice method? Ling Qinglan frowned and nodded. His voice was cold and solemn. It's the inheritance my father left to me when I was young, but I was too young at that time, so I only remembered vaguely. Until I was adopted by my mother and embarked on the road of cultivation, I was able to unlock the seal of the inheritance and know what happened to my father. Su Dain narrated with gratitude on her beautiful face. The Su family will never avenge me. If it weren't for Su Jiuzhou, I would have to wait for many years to avenge my parents. After hearing this, Ling Qinglan was a little confused. The AO sword skills must belong to Su Li, but Su Dain's expression didn't seem to be lying. When did the AO sword skills belong to Su Dain's father, Jin Qingao? Was it possible that Jin Qingao was the successor of Su Li and Su Jiuzhou was fake? Ling Qinglan's pupils shrank. He thought of all the contacts with Su Jiuzhou before. She was too familiar with Su Li, so she definitely had an unusual relationship with Su Li. Which one was the truth? Ling Qinglan was completely confused. But if he asked Su Jiuzhou, he would inevitably be suspected of questioning. At present, although Su Jiuzhou was avenging Su Li, it also seemed that she wanted to unify the Jiuzhou region for her own selfish desire. Su Jiuzhou, are you an enemy or a friend? Ling Qinglan sighed and restrained the complex emotions in his eyes. He left gloomily in Su Dian's puzzled eyes. Jili region was a region controlled by the Tianyin tribe, a holy sect. Most practitioners in this region were good at incantations and poisons, and their practice methods were also quite strange. Even with the holy sect's control, the evil forces were still rampant. It was not as peaceful as the Jiuzhou region. Therefore, just a few days after Su Li arrived, she witnessed several practitioners being cursed to death and robbed of their treasures. They died miserably. She was alone and a female practitioner, so she was inevitably patronized by others. However, the cultivation of these practitioners who survived by robbing was really not good. After Su Li accidentally blew up the heads of several evil practitioners, no one came to trouble her along the way. Following the guidance of the map, Su Li came to a cultivation city named Baisher. As soon as she entered the city, she saw stalls on both sides of the street selling all kinds of jade materials and shouting constantly. Su Li strolled around and saw many stalls selling Mushui spiritual jade. Although the purity was extremely low, it was absolutely impossible to see such a situation in other cultivation cities. Miss, are you curious about the sharp increase in the quality of jade in Baisher City? A kind-looking stall owner saw the surprise on Su Li's slightly immature face, and couldn't help laughing. To tell you the truth, the spiritual mine, not far from Baisher City, has been almost dug out. But when the bottom is seen, it has a second spring. Many rare jade materials have been dug out from it, which makes Baisher City what it is today. Su Li's eyebrows were curved, and her thick curly eyelashes trembled. She showed a simple smile on her face. Anyone who saw her would associate her with an inexperienced female disciple of a sect. Senior, why do you explain to me? I won't buy the things on your stall. As she said, she also pointed to the things on the stall with a look of disgust on her face. The stall owner's face stiffened. He thought that this little girl was really straightforward and didn't save him any face. However, he had been struggling at the bottom of the cultivation circle for hundreds of years, so he naturally wouldn't show what he thought on his face. He immediately replied with a calm smile, I see that you are dressed in extraordinary clothes, so you must have an extraordinary background. I just want to explain to you for a good karma. Don't worry about it, miss. I see. Su Li showed an expression of sudden realization. She immediately snorted and crossed her arms in front of her chest. My elder asked me to come out to gain more experience, and buy some high-purity Mushui spiritual jades back by the way. But I see that the purity of Mushui spiritual jades on the stalls along the way is very low. It seems that I can only go back empty-handed. The stall owner was stunned, and then he was overjoyed. He was about to continue to find a way to get information from her, but he didn't expect that the woman was unsuspecting and directly told him her purpose. That was easy. He rubbed his hands and said with a smile, Little fellow practitioner, although my cultivation is not good, I have been doing the jade business for hundreds of years. I also have a way to get the Mushui spiritual jades you want. I just don't know if your elder is nearby? Su Li's eyes suddenly lit up, and she asked with a smile, Really? Of course. The stall owner nodded repeatedly. I know at a glance that you come from a famous sect. How dare I deceive you? That's great. Su Li showed a proud expression on her face. My master is busy with affairs and will come to this city in 2 days. I can do such a small thing as buying spiritual jades alone. Take me there. You will definitely benefit from it. As she said, she touched the universe ring with her fingertips and threw out a celestial stone. The stall owner was immediately surprised and delighted. He immediately put the celestial stone into the universe ring, for fear that others would see it. "Thank you for your generosity, little fellow practitioner. Please come with me." As he said, he put away the stall and walked through the market to the deep alley. Su Li's eyes narrowed imperceptibly, and then she returned to her innocent appearance and followed him briskly. The stall owner sensed the footsteps behind him, and a smile appeared on his kind face. But compared with the smile just now, it was a little more gloomy. As the two went deeper, the alley became narrower and darker. After a while, the stall owner walked to the end of the alley. He suddenly turned around and looked at Su Li maliciously. Su Li's smile remained unchanged, and she looked around. "We're here. Why didn't I see the entrance?" Ha 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 ha. Hearing such a stupid question, the stall owner couldn't help but laugh ferociously. His expression was no longer kind, but full of ruthlessness. "Little fat sheep, don't blame me for being ruthless. If you want to blame someone, blame your master for not teaching you to be on guard." After that, his 5 fingers turned into claws and quickly grabbed Su Li's head. However, with his cultivation in the early stage of Yuanying realm, he could kill a little girl in Jindan realm easily. Su Li was about to restrain this person and interrogate him about the whereabouts of Mushui's spiritual jade. Suddenly, she stopped her movements and showed a flustered expression on her harmless little face. Seeing this, the stall owner didn't have any compassion, but moved faster. At this moment, a cold shout suddenly sounded behind Su Li. At the same time, a white flowing light also flew quickly to block the stall owner's sharp claws. The flowing light dissipated, and its original appearance was revealed, an ancient mirror for body protection. His good deed was disturbed, and the stall owner's eyes became gloomy. He looked behind Su Li, but he saw a slightly fat and honest young man walking over with a smile. He scolded calmly, "Old guy, the rules of Baishur City are not for decoration. Since I bumped into you, don't think about doing bad things today." Speaking of this, the honest young man smiled and showed 2 small canine teeth. When the stall owner saw the young man's face, his face suddenly changed dramatically. "Why did it have to be this little devil? Damn it, my big fat sheep!" He struggled in his heart. He looked at Su Li, who was at a loss and seemed to have no idea what had happened. Then he looked at the honest young man who was getting closer. "Forget it, little girl. You are lucky." The stall owner snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves and flew away. Just at the moment when he was about to leave, Su Li's clear eyes suddenly flashed a frightening black light. The stall owner only felt a chill on his neck, but he didn't care and left directly. "Tut tut." Black Lotus watched the stall owner leave and muttered, "My master is lucky, but I'm afraid you can't live for more than 3 days." After the honest young man saw the stall owner completely disappear from his sight, the smile of victory on his face immediately turned into fear. He patted his chest with lingering fear. "Fortunately, I have some reputation. Run. If he comes back, I can't beat him." With that, the honest young man ran away. Su Li smiled thoughtfully and followed him. A moment later, in a practitioner's inn, after drinking 3 bowls of tea in a row, the honest young man exhaled a long breath, as if he had discharged all the previous fear. He put down the bowl and saw Su Li staring at him. He couldn't help blushing, touched his cheek and said, "Why are you looking at me? Although I saved your life, you don't fall in love with me at first sight, do you?" Seeing that he was so shy, Su Li couldn't help but laugh. The honest young man also seemed to feel that he was too rude. He scratched his head and said awkwardly, "Well, I like to talk nonsense since I was a child. Don't mind it." Su Li nodded and thought in her heart. The cultivation of this honest young man was only at the peak of Jindan realm, which was much worse than that of the stall owner. But the stall owner would rather give up the benefits after seeing him. Obviously, the background of this young man was not simple. Thinking of this, Su Li smiled and said, "My name is Su Jirjo. Thank you for your help just now. May I know your name?" "Ha ha ha, I don't deserve your name. My name is Xianen." The honest young man stretched out his teacup and said, "I also can't stand the bad behavior of that group of people. I always want to help them when I see them. If it weren't for my good parents, I wouldn't know how many times I would have died." Speaking of this, he suddenly thought of something and said with a straight face, "Yes, I forgot to ask you. How did you accidentally fall into the trap of the evil practitioner? This is fatal." Su Li sighed softly when she heard this, and her tone was a little aggrieved. "I have no experience when I go down the mountain for the first time. I wanted to do something for my master, but I didn't expect that I almost screwed it up." Alas, this sentence seemed to evoke Xian An's memory. He immediately waved his hand and comforted her. "Hey! It's nothing. Nowadays, the world is dangerous, and there are many conspiracies and trick. Miss Su is pure and easy to be fooled. As long as you are careful in the future, you will never make the same mistake again." Su Li nodded. "Thank you for enlightening me, senior fellow apprentice. I feel much better." Hearing Su Li call him senior fellow apprentice, Xian An was stunned at first, and then his smile almost reached his ears. He was the youngest in the sect, and no one had ever called him senior fellow apprentice. Seeing his reaction, Su Li couldn't help but smile. It seemed that she didn't need to go to Tianyak Attic for the intelligence of Jili region. Chapter 486. After a meal, Su Li got the information she wanted from Xianen. The treasure map in Jin Zhentian's hand had been broken in advance a few years ago and became a relic that everyone could go in and explore. In the first 2 years after the relic was opened, it was really a reign of terror. Xianen sighed. There are many tombs that have not been explored. Although there are many dangers, treasures and spiritual materials that are not common in the outside world can be seen everywhere. All the practitioners who thought they had a little cultivation went crazy. The drama of killing each other for treasures was staged there every day. For this reason, at least 20% of the practitioners in Jindan realm in the Jili region were killed. However, few practitioners above Yuanying realm died. If no one targeted them, there were many who escaped by relying on Yuanying realm. Su Li heard this with interest and asked with a smile, "You said it so deeply. Have you seen it with your own eyes?" Xian An scratched his head embarrassedly. "I don't have that ability. I heard it from my father. And at that time, my father was afraid that I would run around, so he grounded me for 3 years." Speaking of this, an extremely deep fear flashed in his eyes, as if he had a lingering fear of those 2 years of closed-door reflection. "Your father is also for your own good." Su Li fiddled with the wine glass in her hand. Although practitioners transcend the realm of mortals, they only have one life. If they lose their life, they will have nothing. Xian An looked at Su Li in a daze and was puzzled. Wasn't she inexperienced in the world? How could she say such profound words? Su Li quickly realized the whole flaw and stuck out her tongue playfully. "This is what my master said. Now I present it to the Buddha with borrowed flowers. Please don't be offended." No, I think it makes sense." The doubts in Xian An's heart dissipated, and he waved his hand. "I didn't understand my father's behavior before. Now after hearing what you said, I understand a little. It's great that junior sister can help." Su Li responded with joy. Xian An saw that she looked sincere and didn't seem to be fake, and he was also moved. He completely let down his guard against her. The atmosphere was silent for a moment, and Su Li broke it with a slightly shy smile. "Senior fellow apprentice, I want to go to the relic to have a look. Can you lead the way?" Xian An hesitated for a moment, but when he saw the disappointment between Su Li's eyebrows, he immediately gritted his teeth and grinned. Of course! This was the 5th year since the relic had been opened. It was no longer that dangerous. I went there once with my father, but if you want me to take you there, you must listen to me and not run around. Otherwise, I won't be able to save you if you encounter danger. Xian warned seriously. After Su Li nodded repeatedly, the itinerary to the relics was finally settled. After that, the two of them booked a room in an inn and agreed to depart the next day. After dinner, Su Li saw that Xian's face was more excited than she pretended to be. She couldn't help laughing secretly. In the end, he was still a young man. She could see at a glance that Xian's age was no more than 500 years old, but his cultivation could reach the peak of Jindan realm. Even if he couldn't be compared with an evildoer, he was definitely a genius at the level of Tianjiao. Shaking her head, Su Li pushed the door into the room. The moment she closed the door, the runes of the tactical matrix flowed between the cracks of the door. In the blink of an eye, the whole room was blocked. The advantage of a practitioner's inn was that every room had an isolation tactical matrix. Although the grade was not high, as long as it was not deliberately destroyed, no one would come to disturb. After checking the room and confirming that there was no hidden trap left by the innkeeper, Su Li went to the inner room and sat cross-legged on the silk futon. She waved her hand and the shadow behind her squirmed. After a while, there was another Su Li in the room. Su Li looked at the face of her previous life and frowned, but she didn't deliberately correct it. Every time she summoned the evil ghost, it appeared with the face of the previous life. Even if she corrected it, it would return to the original appearance next time. So, she simply didn't bother to care about it. With a slight sigh, Su Li threw out a set of clothes for the evil ghost to put on. Then the evil ghost walked to the futon on the side and sat cross-legged, entering the state of enlightenment. Little Su Li, this Black Lotus, came out of the ring in surprise, and released the little white fox who had been suffocated for too long to breathe fresh air. Can the evil ghost still practice by itself? After Black Lotus asked this, Su Li couldn't help raising her eyebrows. Can't it? How is it possible? The evil ghost has no intelligence. As soon as the words came out, the evil ghost, who was still looking for the feeling, suddenly opened its eyes and looked at Black Lotus coldly. Black Lotus suddenly shivered and was horrified. He weakly explained, "That? I am ignorant and ill-informed. Please don't take it to heart." Ho ho ho! As soon as the words came out, Su Li suddenly chuckled. Black Lotus looked back at her with a dumbfounded face, and then turned to look at the evil ghost who ignored him. Suddenly, he reacted and became angry. "Su Li, are you kidding me?" Su Li's smile was slightly restrained and she said meaningfully, "What did you call me?" Black Lotus's scalp was numb, and he immediately gave in. "Forget it. Let's not argue with a madman." Master, what the hell is going on? I have never seen such an evil ghost." Su Li stared at Black Lotus's face and found that his reaction didn't seem to be fake. She stopped joking and shook her head. "Even you don't know." "How can I know? I only need to separate a trace of thought to integrate with the evil ghost, and the evil ghost will have its own intelligence. It can even act by itself, practice by itself, and comprehend the mental method and secret method by itself. As for the enlightenment of the evil ghost, it will be received by me at the moment when I withdraw that trace of thought, as if it was born to practice by itself. Is there such a good thing?" Black Lotus was stunned. "Isn't it equivalent to two of you practicing at the same time? With your talent, if you speed up your practice, won't it be against the natural order?" "It's not the same," Su Li said with pity. "I have tried it. When I withdraw the enlightenment and practice of the evil ghost, I will lose half of it, which is much slower than my own practice." "You should be satisfied." Black Lotus rolled his eyes. "I have never seen such a good thing like you. If the previous generations of the body of evil ghost got such a talent, they would have been crazy with joy. Talent? Suli was surprised and murmured thoughtfully, "This is not my awakened talent, or, it may be part of my talent. This is not all." Black Lotus's eyes were wide open, as if his eyeballs were going to pop out. "The premise is that it has eyeballs," Suli replied softly, but she didn't intend to continue to say. Black Lotus was itching in his heart, but he didn't dare to force Suli to say it. He could only pout, put the little white fox into the ring, and sulk alone. Woo woo woo, the little white fox nested in the ring space and looked at Black Lotus aggrievedly. She wanted to be with her master. Uncle Black was a big bad guy. The night passed slowly as Suli and the evil ghost comprehended the Suayu tactics at the same time. It was a silent night. In the morning of the next day, Xianan got up and opened the door, but he saw Suli sitting at the table downstairs, enjoying the spiritual tea prepared by the inn. He immediately went downstairs and sat down at Suli's table. He said embarrassedly, "Junior sister apprentice, you came earlier than me. I'm really ashamed." Suli smiled and pushed another cup of tea to Xianan. "It's a joke. I was so excited that I didn't sleep all night. I want to see what the relics look like." "Ha!" Xianan couldn't help laughing. "Junior sister apprentice, you are really interesting. But when I just went down the mountain, I was almost the same as you." Black Lotus yawned in the ring space. When he heard the conversation between the two, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. "You acted so real. You are more than 2,000 years old, but you still have the nerve to pretend to be young. You dare to speak ill of the master." I heard it all. The voice of reincarnation sounded leisurely, and Black Lotus instantly jumped up. He glared at the spirit of reincarnation mirror that suddenly appeared in the ring space. "You damn donkey! How dare you appear in front of me?" When the phantom of the little beast heard Black Lotus's words, its old face suddenly darkened. "Why do you always mention the old things?" "Tut!" Black Lotus sneered. "You still dare to show up? Aren't you afraid that Suli still holds a grudge and grinds your bones into ashes?" The little critter shuddered, and its phantom image swayed, but it quickly stabilized. It said in a muffled voice, "Master had noticed me a long time ago, but she didn't make a move. I was completely refined by her blood. If she dies, I will be destroyed once again. In this way, she is not afraid of my betrayal at all. As long as I serve the Master with all my heart and shield her from nature's mysteries, there is nothing to be afraid of." At the same time, the little beast was still a little unconfident, but its attitude still made Black Lotus gnash his teeth with hatred. "Also, my strength has recovered a little after swallowing the fragment. You and I are originally one, so it is easy for me to come here. I heard you speak ill of the Master just now, and I can't turn a blind eye." As soon as the words came out, Black Lotus's face instantly darkened, and he scolded, "Come on. Hurt each other. If Suli is angry and crazy, none of us can survive." The little beast looked at Black Lotus's collapse with a blank face, feeling wronged. What did he say? He just said what he thought. Why did Black Lotus seem to be stimulated? He didn't know that before he woke up, there was a scene where Suli killed herself to force Black Lotus to show up. Let's not talk about the movement in the ring first. Under the guidance of Xianan, Suli went out of the city all the way to the north. The speed was not fast. Xianan also took the opportunity to tell Suli about the current situation of Qingshui Circle. After all, it was his duty as a senior fellow apprentice to popularize the current situation of the cultivation circle. Suli wanted to ask in a roundabout way, but she didn't expect Xianan to be so tactful. She immediately slowed down her speed again and again. Compared with the current situation of the sex in Qingshui Circle, Mushui's spiritual jade became less important. The Jiuzhou region was a place where the news was blocked. Even if she could buy a lot of information from Tianyake Attic, It was only the superficial situation. All the things about her were regarded as secrets by the sections. It was too difficult to know through Tianyak attic. The most convenient way was to find a person who was really born in the rich and powerful circle to ask. However, with her sensitive identity, it was difficult to find a suitable person. Fortunately, when she came to find Mushue's spiritual jade this time, she really met one by chance. Chapter 487. Nowadays, the cultivation circle is led by the four holy sects: Xingtian Shrine, Ankuei Valley, Huangxing Hall, and Tianhe Sect. Many holy sects with deep foundations are respected. Xianan said while flying and leading the way, as if he had been in the secular world for many years and had rich experience. In fact, he just repeated what his father told him to Su Li. However, Xian An's vanity was greatly satisfied when he saw Su Li's serious listening look. Among the four holy sects, the most powerful one is Xingtian Shrine, which is inclined to the evil sect. When Xian An mentioned Xingtian Shrine, his eyes flashed with disgust, but Xingtian Shrine has survived from the ancient cultivation era to the present. I don't know how many terrible means it has accumulated, and it has a deep friendship with many old monsters of cultivation, including Fate Ancestor. Fate Ancestor? Su Li repeated, showing curiosity. Who is Fate Ancestor? Why do you mention him? You don't even know Fate Ancestor? Xian An turned his head, and his eyes widened slightly. Junior Sister Apprentice, how does your master popularize the common sense of the cultivation circle to you? It's too irresponsible. Su Li blinked embarrassedly. Senior Fellow Apprentice, to be honest, this time, I sneaked out. What? Xian An said in surprise, and then rolled his eyes. He scolded angrily. The people in the cultivation circle are sinister. How can you sneak down the mountain? Fortunately, you met me. If something bad happens to you, your master and senior fellow apprentices will be worried. Su Li's beautiful eyes showed a lingering fear, and she nodded very sincerely. Senior fellow apprentice, you are right. But I have come out this time. I can't go back empty-handed, can I? Besides, I have you to accompany me. Xian An was angry and amused, but he remembered that he had sneaked down the mountain more than once many years ago. His character was lively, but his parents were calm. He didn't know whose character he took after. Forget it. Xian An waved his hand helplessly. In this case, I will be your guide for a period of cultivation. But after going to the relics, you must promise me that you will immediately go back to the sect to keep your master safe. Senior fellow apprentice, you are right. Su Li nodded repeatedly and finally calmed down Xian An's emotions. He organized his words and continued, speaking of Fate Ancestor, it is a unique title in Qingshui's circle. I heard that it has been passed down to this day, and no one knows how many people have replaced it. No one knew the specific origin of the Fate Ancestor of this generation. His cultivation was just Junior Emperor, but he was regarded as the leader of Qingshui's circle by many practitioners. Not because of anything else, but because he walks the Tao of heavenly secrets. Tianji. Su Li's eyes flickered slightly. She didn't say much and continued to listen. The Tao of heavenly secrets is not the same as the Tao of divination. It is a great Tao that allows one to see the destiny of a person and even the future of the entire world of cultivators. Xian An's eyes lit up. I heard from my father that not everyone can walk on the Tianji path. Those who pry into the secrets of the heavens will be punished by the heavens. If an ordinary cultivator were to cultivate the Tao of heavenly secrets, their lifespans would definitely be shortened. However, there is also a group of people with special constitutions who can live longer by cultivating the Tao of heavenly secret. They might even be favored by the heavenly Tao. Su Li pursed her lips and saw the envy in Xian An's eyes. Be on the same side as the heavenly axiom? Wasn't that her enemy? The reason why the fate ancestor of this generation is respected is because of two major contributions. Xian An's voice suddenly became high-spirited. The first major contribution is that he and the great emperor of Lihan prevented the invasion of the alien realm and set up the Lihan tablet, so that outsiders could not enter. He protected the peace of Qingshui Circle for 10,000 years. The second major contribution is that he killed the daughter of luck of this generation. Su Li's pupil shrank slightly, and her voice was indeed normal. Senior fellow apprentice, what is the daughter of luck? Why did you kill her? Xian An immediately explained the daughter of luck to Su Li, and said naturally, the fate ancestor once said that the daughter of luck violated the natural law, and the natural law would be angry. Then, Qingshui Circle would be destroyed. How could the words of such a big shot be wrong? Look at Su Li, the daughter of luck 1,000 years ago. Because of her appearance, more than 80% of the talents of Qingshui Circle died, which led to the shortage of talents on the list of 10,000 talents. It was a great disaster. Su Li narrowed her eyes, and a black light flashed in her pupils. In the previous life, she was born in a muddle, lived in a muddle, and died in a muddle. It turned out that in the eyes of the world, it was actually her fault? By the way, Xian An suddenly clapped his hands and subconsciously lowered his tone. Speaking of the daughter of luck, I eavesdropped on the conversation between my father and an elder 2 days ago. The fate ancestor suddenly appeared a month ago and issued a decree. The daughter of luck of the new generation appeared again. Su Li was stunned for a moment and asked, the descendant of the Ghost clan in Ghost Region? That's her. Xian An looked excited, and almost fell off the flying sword. According to the prediction of the fate ancestor, the daughter of luck of this generation is extraordinary and much more difficult to deal with than the holy girl Su. She is not only the daughter of luck, but also the taboo of the Ghost clan that has long been extinct. She has the body of evil ghost, and her means are unpredictable. Now the entire Qingshui Circle has issued a wanted order. As long as anyone finds the whereabouts of the descendant of the Ghost clan and reports it to the truth, he will get an extremely generous reward. Su Li's face was slightly pale. Following Xian An's words, she naturally showed fear. There is such a terrible person in the cultivation circle. We practitioners should work together to kill the demon. Junior sister apprentice, you are right. Now that the chaos in the cultivation circle has just emerged, it is the time for us to show our skills. Looking at Xian An's complacent appearance, Su Li's eyes flashed with a gloomy cloud. Her lips were slightly raised, and she showed an indescribable evil intention. It turned out that her identity had been found to such a situation? If Xian An hadn't pointed it out, she would still be in the dark. If she used that identity to act again, it was likely that all her previous efforts would be in vain. Fortunately, she was delayed by Zisha's affairs, and she never appeared in the eyes of the holy sex again. In this way, Zisha was her benefactor? Su Li laughed in her heart. Black Lotus, as you said, I am a mouse that everyone in the cultivation circle wants to beat. But I am not the body of evil ghost, but the daughter of luck in the previous life. Black Lotus sensed the chill in her mind and shrank his head. He didn't dare to respond for fear of angering her. The spirit of reincarnation mirror didn't dare to say anything. Although it was an accomplice of the fate ancestor and the group of people in the previous life, it did do it after all. Oh! The little white fox lying on the side of Black Lotus pricked up its ears and looked around in confusion. Why was the master angry? Junior sister apprentice. Junior sister apprentice? Xian An's voice pulled Su Li back to reality. Su Li raised her head, and the haze in her eyes faded away instantly. She smiled sweetly. Senior fellow apprentice, I'm fine. I just listened to the strange people and things that you said, and I was lost in thought. Hey, that's all in the future. Our cultivation is still weak now. If the descendant of the Ghost Clan really shows up to do evil, someone will punish her. Su Li responded obediently when she heard the words and said, "My sect is not strong. I have heard of the Tianjiao list that you mentioned, but I don't know much about it. Can you explain it to me in detail?" "That's not difficult." Xian waved his hand, but his finger pointed to the endless black ruins under the dark clouds ahead. "However, we have already arrived at the relics. The periphery is not dangerous. Why don't we explore the periphery now? I will tell you. How about it?" The smile on Su Li's face became more gentle, and her voice was crisp like the cry of an empty valley. "Senior fellow apprentice, you are really a good person." Xian was suddenly praised, and he subconsciously scratched his head. His face was slightly red, and he giggled. Jiguang's sect was the second largest sect in Jili region. Xian Jingzhou, the lord of Jiguang's sect, was a legendary cultivator in Jili region. Although Xian Jingzhou was the legitimate son of the previous lord of Jiguang's sect, he only had ordinary low-grade spiritual root, and his cultivation speed was far less than that of his peers. The previous lord spent a lot of effort to raise his spiritual root to middle grade, but he was not as good as other outstanding disciples in the sect. In addition, Xian Jingzhou neglected cultivation and was obsessed with wine. The disciples of Jiguang's sect all laughed at him in private. 1,000 years ago, the reincarnation mirror opened. Although it was a lucky chance, the danger of death was not small. The previous lord knew that his life was coming to an end, so he made up his mind to send Xian Jingzhou into the reincarnation mirror. After the bloody accident of Holy Spirit, Xian Jingzhou disappeared for decades. Everyone thought that Xian Jingzhou died in it. The previous lord was so disheartened that he didn't see his son come back until he died. But one day, Xian Jingzhou suddenly returned in an extremely powerful manner. Not only did his cultivation reach the nature's test realm, which was beyond the reach of his peers, but his combat power was also extraordinary. It was as easy as eating and drinking to crush practitioners at the same level. Therefore, relying on the loyal supporters left by his father, Xian Jingzhou became the new lord without much effort. After becoming the lord, the first thing Xian Jingzhou did was not to eliminate his opponents in the sect, but to marry an elder of a new sect in Jili region as his cultivation companion. And that cultivation companion was none other than Su Yu. Wanjian sect Su Yu. Pavilion head Wen Tingshan. This move attracted the envy of countless small sects in Jili region, but no one dared to do anything under the power of the Jiguang sect. With the support of the Jiguang sect, the Wanjian sect quickly became stronger. A few years later, Xian Jingzhou and Su Yu's son was born. The young lord saved a young female practitioner in Baisher City and is exploring the periphery of the white stone relics with her. Hearing the report from his subordinates, Xian Jingzhou suddenly had a headache. He pinched his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "Have you found out the origin of the female practitioner? This little rascal is really spoiled. There's never a day where he doesn't make people worry." Su Yu, who was flipping through the recent intelligence files, immediately raised her head and said softly, "Husband, I didn't hear it clearly just now. Can you say it again?" Xian Jingzhou's face trembled slightly, and he turned his head with a smile. "My wife, I'm just worried about him. What if he is deceived by a woman of unknown origin?" Su Yu rolled her eyes and ignored him, but her eyes clearly said, "Since you are sensible, I will let you go." Xian Jingzhou waved his hand to dismiss his confidants, who had been holding back hard, and smiled bitterly in his heart. It was all the sin in the reincarnation mirror that he had been trapped in for a lifetime. He sighed and tidied up the black file at hand. The 3 big words on it were particularly conspicuous. Leanly building. Chapter 488. The periphery of the white stone relics was covered with a faint mist, which covered the ruins and ancient buildings. It was so quiet that it was frightening. Suddenly, swish, swish, two white streamers fell from the sky in a straight line. After the light dissipated, Su Li and Xian An appeared. Although the danger on the periphery of the relics is low, you can't be careless. You must follow me closely. Xian An told her and looked around cautiously. His expression was not as relaxed as before. Su Li nodded slightly and followed Xian An. She narrowed her eyes and looked around. The geology of the relics was completely different from the ordinary soil outside the white stone city. It was brownish-purple like blood. From a distance, it was as black as ink, which was somewhat similar to the black stone forest. However, the fog in the black stone forest was so dark that people couldn't see their fingers. Compared with the white fog here, it was much weaker. At least at a glance, she could see many tall silhouettes through the fog. Unfortunately, Xian An didn't dare to go there. She didn't intend to expose her strength, so she could only give up for the time being. Xian An was born in an extraordinary family, and he had been practicing outside alone for many years. He slowed down his pace and took Su Li to familiarize herself with the relic. There were no surprises or dangers along the way. Although they encountered a few evil practitioners who didn't have eyes, they were solved by him quickly. A few days later, as Su Li expected, they got some waste treasures. But Xian An was still very happy, and his tense mind relaxed a lot. While he continued to explore with Su Li, he intermittently talked about the Tianjiao list of top 10,000 people. There are thousands of practitioners in the cultivation circle. There are always a small group of people who are favored by nature. They show extraordinary potential from an early age and are called the Tianjiao list of 10,000 people. The Tianjiao list of 10,000 people, as the name implies. It is the top 10,000 practitioners in a generation of Tianjiao. If they want to be on the list, they must fight for it through the Tianjiao battle. Speaking of this, Xian An's eyes showed a sense of eagerness. Speaking of it, this Tianjiao battle is about to begin. I am only in my early 500 years old. I am still young. The top 10,000 people are too far away for me, but I can still see the world. Senior fellow apprentice, is 500 years old still young? Su Li followed Xian An to clear the obstacles on the slope and pretended to be puzzled. Xian An immediately rolled his eyes. He turned his head and saw Su Li with a trace of childishness on her small face. He said angrily, 500 years is considered a long time for mortals, but for us cultivators, it is but a snap of the fingers. The age limit of the list of top 10,000 people was 2,000 years old, and it was changed every 500 years. However, the last two prodigy battles were not held successfully because of the disaster brought about by the Lady of Providence. Who knows how many people were over the age limit and lost their only chance to enter the prodigy rankings. Speaking of this, expectation appeared on Xian An's face. After 1,500 years, this Tianjiao battle will be extremely exciting. If I don't go and have a look, it will be a pity. Senior brother, even I want to go and have a look. It's a pity that I don't know if Master will bring me there after I return to the sect. She seemed to be attracted by the scene described by Xian An, and her face was full of expectation. Xian An laughed. Junior sister apprentice, don't worry. The Tianjiao battle is a grand event in the entire Qingshui circle. This time I will take you to find some Mushui spiritual jades and take them back. It can be regarded as making up for my mistake. For the sake of the spiritual jades, you will have a place in the team that goes to the Xingxian mountain to watch the battle. Xian An said with certainty. Su Li's eyes lit up, and she clapped her hands repeatedly and said, "Thank you for your care, senior fellow apprentice. You are so kind." Xian An blushed again and giggled happily. When Black Lotus heard Su Li's coquettish voice, he almost vomited out the souls that he swallowed 2 days ago. But when he saw samsara lying on the side, he swallowed the soul nourishment back in a daze. Lord, the female practitioner accompanying the young lord is very simple. Her bone age is less than 300 years old. She is not a threat to the young lord, but her origin is unknown, and it can't be found out in a short time. She may come from another big region or be a disciple of a small sect. When Xian Jingzhou heard the words, the wrinkles on his eyebrows disappeared slightly, but he still cared about the words unknown origin. He immediately ordered, "Continue to investigate, but you can slow down the speed appropriately. You should hurry to recruit practitioners for the Guling gambling battle. There is not much time left." Yes. After the confidant left, Xian Jingzhou rubbed his eyebrows, which were a little painful. His shoulders suddenly felt heavy, but he was not surprised. When he looked back and saw Su Yu, who was massaging his shoulders for him, the tenderness in his eyes rippled. Su Yu no longer looked like a tigress at the moment. There was a trace of worry on her beautiful face. "Master, is this trip too risky?" Xian Jingzhou's broad palm gently rested on the back of Su Yu's hand, and he shook his head firmly. The treasures in Su Li's hands have long been clearly investigated by some people. If we don't even take back the sound acquaintance, the prestige that the Linli building has built up will plummet. What's more, Xian Jingzhou's eyes darkened. Ling Qinglan and Chu Lu are still in their hands. This time, we must succeed no matter what. Su Yu was not an indecisive person. She knew the importance of this action. Although she was still extremely worried, she didn't show it. She just nodded and said, "Senior fellow apprentice is ready. If the gambling battle fails, he will take action personally. But in this case, the Wanjian sect will be exposed. Senior fellow apprentice can only take people to hide in the dark. It is not good for many people to be involved." Xian Jingzhou nodded solemnly and sighed. "I have secretly recruited experts who use poisonous insects. I hope it will not come to this step." A few days later, in an underground ruin on the periphery of the relic, with a muffled sound, Xian climbed out of the pit with a dirty face. Seeing Su Li squatting by the pit, he sighed and spread out his palm. No one found this underground addendum before. There are also spiritual jades in it, but they are not Mushui spiritual jade. They are just ordinary spiritual jades. Su Li saw a few pieces of inferior spiritual jades scattered in Xian'an's palm, and her shining eyes immediately dimmed. She reluctantly smiled and said, "Senior fellow apprentice, thank you for your hard work. If you really can't find it, forget it." At the same time, she was thinking in her heart whether to leave Xian'an and go to the depths of the relics alone. Seeing the disappointment in her eyes, Xian'an couldn't help but feel disappointed. This was the first time that he was a senior fellow apprentice, but he couldn't help much. If his strength was stronger, he might be able to take her to the relics to have a look. Xian'an, who was lazy in cultivation, had the idea of working hard to cultivate again in his mind. But he couldn't become fat in one bite. It was obviously unrealistic to improve his strength now. He suppressed his anxious mind and thought for a moment. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he clapped his hands and said, "I got it! Let's go to Tianyake Attic!" He said excitedly, and subconsciously wanted to take Su Li's hand and take her away. Su Li's eyes flickered slightly, and she stepped aside without a trace. But she looked confused. "Tianyake Attic? Why do we go to Tianyake Attic? Although they sell information there, the relics have only been opened for a few years. If there is really information about Mushui spiritual jades for sale, they have been looted long ago." When Xian'an heard this, he immediately forgot the doubt that Su Li dodged his action and quickly explained, "That's different. We are going to the temporary station set up by Tianyake Attic in the White Stone Relic. If there is no news about Mushui spiritual jades in that place, we don't have to waste our efforts anymore. We can simply go to Huangxing Chamber of Commerce to buy them." "I see. Senior fellow apprentice, let's go quickly." Su Li's face showed hope, and then she wondered, what is Huangxing Chamber of Commerce? Is it related to Huangxing Hall? Yes. Xian'an nodded and raised his hand. The flying sword was unsheathed with a clang in the air. He jumped on the flying sword and looked back with a smile. The strength of Huangxing Hall is not strong among the four-peak holy sects, but the group of old Taoist nuns do business reasonably. Huangxing Chamber of Commerce is the largest chamber of commerce in Qingshui Circle. As long as you can afford it, you can buy almost anything. Su Li called out the flying sword and showed a look of understanding. She immediately bowed slightly and said, "Thank you for solving my doubts, senior fellow apprentice. It doesn't matter. It's just a trifle. Let's go to the station and have a look." Xian'an waved his hand, and the flying sword rushed into the sky with him. Su Li followed closely with a faint smile in her eyes. This brat was like a treasure trove. Every sentence of his could dig out a considerable amount of information. He was truly her lucky star. Tianyake Attic, the largest intelligence organization in Qingshui Circle. Originally, Su Li didn't know who set it up. But after Xian'an showed off, she finally learned that it was left by a force called Tianxing Valley in ancient times. Although there were a large number of intelligence dealers cooperating with Tianyake Attic, and the organization was very loose, in fact, it was loose on the outside and tight on the inside. The real decision-makers of Tianyake Attic rarely showed up, and their background was even more unfathomable. Even if it was not listed among the four-peak holy sects, it was the most mysterious among all the cultivation forces in Qingshui Circle. Little Su Li, Tianyake Attic is not as simple as this silly boy said. In my heyday, Qingshui Circle was in a mess, but this organization was still unshakable and feared by everyone. At that time, I suspected that the real origin of Tianyake Attic could be traced back to the primitive times. Black Lotus, why didn't you tell me about Tianyake Attic before? Well, you didn't ask me, did you? Black Lotus was embarrassed. Fortunately, Su Li didn't probe further. She and Xian'an stopped. What came into view was a temporarily built bustling market. People were coming and going, and the regular stone streets and houses looked extremely comfortable. Su Li looked up and saw the iconic three big words, Tianyake Attic, engraved on the tall stone archway at the gate of the market. And below this line of three words, there was also the word station. As Xian'an said, it was a temporary station. Xian'an smiled, but he secretly wiped his sweat and was anxious. He had never been here. He almost got lost after looking around the relic for a few times. Fortunately, he was lucky. I heard that the station of Tianyake Attic is very safe, and no one is allowed to fight. I hope it is true, Xian'an muttered in his heart, and finally walked into the stone archway with Su Li. Chapter 489. As soon as they passed through the illusory gate in the stone archway, they heard the hustle and bustle, but it was not chaotic. Su Li glanced at it roughly, and then strolled with Xian'an. There were stalls on both sides of the dirt and stone street. Most of the stalls were unknown objects obtained from the relic. If anyone was interested in buying, he would be pulled into a separate soundproof tactical matrix by the stall owner to talk about it in detail. In addition to the stalls, she also saw many bulletin boards erected on the roadside, which were shining with a little spiritual light. She could see all the information at a glance with the divine awareness. Most of the messages on these bulletin boards are soliciting helpers to explore the relics together. After Xian'an glanced at dozens of bulletin boards, the hope in his eyes was slightly dim, but he still smiled on the surface. Let's look carefully, and we will always get something. When he said this, he suddenly narrowed his eyes and looked back abruptly, but he saw nothing. Is it an illusion? Xian'an frowned, and he always felt that there was a faint feeling of peeping behind him. Senior fellow apprentice? Su Li called out, and he immediately returned to his senses. He smiled as if nothing had happened. Let's go and look for it again. Su Li nodded gently, and her eyes naturally drifted to the two corners behind her. There were two groups of obscure pneumas faintly locked on Xianen. They should not be the same force, and one of them had impressive strength. However, for her, there was not much difference in the strength of these two groups of people, so she didn't bother to pay attention to them. Less than half a day later, Xianen took Su Li to run all over the bulletin board. There might be news of Mushue's spiritual jade, but all of them were in the depths of the relics. Seeing that Xianen put his disappointment on his face without scheming, Su Li secretly laughed in her heart, but she comforted him on the surface. "Senior fellow apprentice, don't worry. I see that the news on the bulletin board is changing every day. Why don't we wait here for a few days? Maybe we will be lucky enough to meet it." "That's the only way." Xianen sighed and agreed with Su Li, but he didn't have much hope in his heart. He was even thinking about which branch of the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce to go to. Taking a deep breath, Xian's eyes became firm again. There was no turning back. Since he had promised this girl that he would help her find Mushue's spiritual jade, he would definitely not break his promise. Young sect leader is still childish. The old man who secretly protected Xian shook his head, but a smile appeared on his face. "Otherwise, I will arrange a surprise for this kid. But in that case, will the master say that I spoil him too much?" In the next few days, Xianen took Su Li to see the bulletin board. Unfortunately, the spiritual messages in the bulletin board were changing every day, but there was no new news about Mushue's spiritual jade. "Junior sister apprentice, I think we'd better go to Huangxing Chamber of Commerce." In front of the notice board, Xianen took back his divine awareness, sighed deeply, turned his head and said. Su Li was about to nod, but at this moment, a travel-worn practitioner came in a hurry. He stretched out his palm and pressed a rune into the groove of the bulletin board. Then he rushed to the next bulletin board without looking at it. Boom! A burst of light emerged on the notice board. Xian's expression froze, and he intercepted the extra spiritual message. Spiritual light has appeared in the Gu burial grounds periphery. A top-grade numinous treasure has appeared, and there are many Gu demons. Now we are recruiting practitioners whose cultivation is not lower than Jindan realm to go together. The reward: those who kill many Gu demons can exchange their poisonous insect cores for Mushue's spiritual jade. When Xianen saw the last line of words, his eyes suddenly brightened and he said in surprise, "There is news, and it is in the periphery. Let's go and have a look." Su Li's eyes flickered slightly, but she also showed surprise on the surface. Then she left. Not long after, the two came to the stone archway of the station. Xianen saw a group of people gathered there from a distance, and they were surrounded by temporary wooden fences. Xianen roughly counted more than 50 people. The leading middle-aged practitioner's cultivation was not high, only hovering in the early stage of Yuanying realm. But his clothes and the flying sword in his hand revealed the fact that he had an extraordinary background. Xianen ran through this person's face in his mind, but he did not find a junior of a famous sect who matched him. However, he was only familiar with the descendants of famous sects in Jili region. Qingshui's circle was so big, so this person probably came from other big regions after hearing the news. "Stop!" Xianen approached and was immediately stopped by two serious-looking guards. He immediately held his fist and smiled. "Fellow practitioner, we brother and sister received the news on the bulletin board, so we come to help." As soon as the words came out, the hostility in the eyes of the two guards was slightly relieved. One of them said coldly, "My master is recruiting practitioners in Jindan realm, not young masters and young ladies who come out for sightseeing. If you want to join my master's team, you must have the corresponding strength." Xianen was not annoyed when he heard the words. He took a step forward, and the pneuma of the peak of Jindan realm was undoubtedly revealed. Su Li also cooperated and revealed her cultivation in the early stage of Jindan realm. The guard's face suddenly changed, and he changed his previous indifferent attitude. He also held his fist and said pleasantly, "You too, please." Xian'an nodded with a smile and entered the fence. The middle-aged practitioner in luxurious clothes immediately greeted them. "Young masters, you have reached Jindan realm at such a young age. You must have an extraordinary background. My servants really offended you just now." "It doesn't matter. In the cultivation circle, the strong are respected. I understand." Xian'an waved his hand and said indifferently. The middle-aged practitioner touched the universe ring with his finger and took out 2 crystal-clear water-blue spiritual jade. "This is an apology gift. Please accept it, young heroes." Seeing this thing, Su Li's calm and obedient face suddenly froze. She stared at the spiritual jades in the hands of the middle-aged practitioner and slightly stimulated the Suiyu tactics in her body. Immediately, a subtle water spiritual power separated from the spiritual jades and integrated into her body. At this moment, Su Li immediately felt that the originally solid bottleneck of Jindan realm had a tendency to disintegrate, but it only disintegrated by 1/10,000th, and then it stopped. Mushue's spiritual jades were useful. Su Li's eyes changed, and she was thinking. Since Mushue's spiritual jades were useful, would the other Mu spiritual jades of the 5 elements also be effective? Among the Mu spiritual jades of the 5 elements, only Mushue's spiritual jades and Mushue's spiritual jades were precious. These 2 kinds of spiritual jades were the holy medicine for healing, and they were the raw materials of the life-melting pill and the life-melting pill. The other 3 kinds of spiritual jades were much more common. After this experiment, she had a preliminary estimate in her mind. If she wanted to break through the bottleneck of Jindan realm, she would need at least tens of thousands of spiritual jade. The production of Mushue's spiritual jades was not high, so it was obviously unrealistic to use it for practice. Xian'an didn't want to accept it, but seeing Su Li's focused and very interested look, he didn't refuse after all. After taking the spiritual jades, he cupped his fists and thanked her. Mushue's spiritual jades were not precious to him. Although there were not many Mushue spiritual jades collected by the Jiguang sect, he knew that his father's most precious treasure was much rarer than Mushue's spiritual jade. Any one of them could be worth thousands of Mushue's spiritual jades. However, if he really took those things out to exchange for Mushue's spiritual jades, he didn't know whether he could get it or not, but he would definitely be taken back by his father and put in confinement before he could reach that step. Thinking of the confinement he had been in these years, Xian'an shook his head hard to get rid of the strange thoughts in his mind. Then he stuffed the spiritual jades into Su Li's hands and transmitted the sound. "Although I don't know this person, he is generous, humble and polite. I don't think he will go back on his words for that little reward. Junior sister apprentice, don't worry." Su Li held the spiritual jades that were still warm in her hand. She slightly pursed her lips and hesitated to transmit the sound. "Otherwise, I can take these 2 Mushue spiritual jades back to fool the master. I don't want you to be in danger, senior fellow apprentice." Xian'an was moved, but he couldn't help laughing. He said helplessly, "The mouth is short of the mouth. He said that these 2 spiritual jades are an apology gift. You really think it is an apology gift? If we leave now, we will probably be stopped." "Really?" Su Li's eyes showed panic. "Then we don't want these spiritual jades. Let's leave quickly." "Don't worry. Don't panic." Xian'an pressed the spiritual jades back into Su Li's palm, blinked and said, "So many people go together. What are you afraid of? If there is really danger, we can run away." "Then okay." Su Li nodded worriedly. She lowered her head to look at the Mushue spiritual jades in her hand, and a trace of mockery flashed in her eyes. They looked for Mushue's spiritual jades for only a few days, and Mushue's spiritual jades came to them obediently. How could there be such a good thing in the world? What's more, she glanced back at the few practitioners who came in after them. Although they also looked like casual practitioners, The pneuma revealed by their gestures was clearly the same as that of the middle-aged practitioner. Most of the people waiting in the fence, she had actually felt it from one of the groups of people who secretly stared at Xian. It's interesting. Since Xian is unwilling to leave, I will see who wants to trouble him. Thinking of this, Su slightly raised the corner of her mouth and pretended to walk with Xian unconsciously. Xian obviously couldn't notice this. He just took Su to sit down in a place and waited patiently. When it was getting late, the number of people in the fence had reached 80. Su was surprised to find that the second group of people who secretly followed Xian also sneaked in. The two groups of people mixed together, and no one recognized the real purpose of the other. The atmosphere was strange and harmonious. The middle-aged practitioner in luxurious clothes also frowned at the moment. The person he sent clearly only deliberately issued a commission in front of Xian in order to lead him to come here alone. Originally, it was an accident that Su had never seen before, but he didn't expect that when he gathered his own people, more than 30 casual practitioners came in one after another. Judging from Xian's reaction, they were not people of the Jiguang sect. Your Honor, there are more than 30 miscellaneous people. How should we deal with them? Some people under his command showed hesitation. The middle-aged practitioner who was originally smiling narrowed his eyes when he heard the words, and his smile became a little more casual. They are just some repulsive casual practitioners in Jindan realm. Since they broke into the hell, we can kill them together. After we kill the boy of the Xian family, we will take the benefits and leave. We don't have to stay in the Jili region anymore. Many people dressed as guards were shocked and bowed their heads in response. The skinny elder who had been resting on the side also opened his eyes and nodded gently. The middle-aged practitioner smiled more when he saw this. He didn't care about the guards. As long as the skinny elder agreed, it would be foolproof. Even if the rest of the people died, it didn't matter. Chapter 490. Master, it's almost time. Behind the fence, a guard beside the middle-aged cultivator whispered in a low voice. The middle-aged cultivator turned the jade ring on his thumb, walked to the center of the field, and said with a bright smile, "Everyone, it's almost time. Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, all the practitioners who were resting stood up. One person beside the middle-aged practitioner immediately led the way. They passed through the range of the tactical matrix, and the other 80 people immediately followed. On the way, the middle-aged practitioner talked about some precautions in the burial ground of poisonous insect. You must be familiar with the burial ground of poisonous insects, but for the sake of everyone, I still have to explain. There are opportunities everywhere in the burial ground of poisonous insect. Don't let go of any poisonous insect stone. Maybe there is a precious poisonous insect in the state of tortoise. Moreover, you can kill poisonous insect demons, but you can't destroy the demonic mother. Otherwise, no one can save you. Xian nodded repeatedly. His father once said that the white stone relics was built on a huge burial ground of poisonous insect. It was normal for there to be a small burial ground of poisonous insects in the periphery. Relying on this, he became even more confident in the operation this time. Su only knew a little about it. After secretly asking Xianen, a touch of understanding flashed through her eyes. This white stone relics turned out to be a burial ground of poisonous insects for cultivation. In the ancient cultivation era, poisonous insect practitioners existed. Although they were rare, each poisonous insect practitioner's means were unpredictable. They did things that ordinary people couldn't do, and the poisonous insects in their hands also had their own functions. In the reincarnation mirror, the sound acquaintance, poisonous insect tracking for miles, and poisonous soul eating, she encountered were all very rare poisonous insects in the poisonous insect cultivation system. ordinary poisonous insects simply superimposed the cultivation of poisonous insect practitioners, and their functions were very limited. Su Li still remembered that in the reincarnation mirror, she used sound acquaintance for the first time. She diverted the trouble to Yang Wei and solved a big problem for herself. Sound acquaintance was refracted in Qin Shui's circle, and it still had the same effect. Even if a practitioner in Zhuji realm used it, it would be difficult for a practitioner in Huashan realm to distinguish whether it was real or fake. If she got it again, it would play a greater role. Thinking of this, Su Li's eyes flashed, and she glanced around. The poisonous insect cultivation was good, but the premise was that this action was real. An hour later, the group of more than 80 people had reached the critical point between the outer and inner ring of the ruins. If they advanced a few more miles, the danger would increase by several times. Xian An looked at the desolate and lonely ruins around him. Except for their team, there was no one else. Is this really the Gu burial ground? He couldn't help but ask. The middle-aged cultivator smiled. Young hero, don't worry. If the Gu graveyard was so easy to find, it would have been dug out 2 years ago. We wouldn't have had a chance. When Xian An heard the words, he felt it was reasonable, and temporarily put down the doubts in his heart. But he was easy to deceive. Among the other 30 people, an old man in a gray robe noticed that something was wrong. His face suddenly changed and he shouted, "Young lord, be careful! There's a killing array underground." As soon as the words came out, Xian An's pupils shrank instantly. Without saying a word, he pulled Su Li back and wanted to get away from the middle-aged practitioner. Damn it, it's the bastards of the Jiguang sect. The middle-aged cultivator's expression turned ugly. He waved his hand and shouted, "Attack!" As soon as he gave the order, the practitioners dressed as guards, who had faintly formed a circle around Xian An, approached in an instant. Xian An's expression was cold. He waved one hand and dozens of spiritual jades exploded, turning into barriers to protect the surroundings. Colorful spiritual power poured on them, and blasted in the silent mountain. At the same time, the rest of the middle-aged cultivator's subordinates had also fought with the practitioners of the Jiguang sect. In a few seconds there were casualties. Young lord. The old man in a gray robe's face changed wildly. His white sleeves swelled in the wind and turned into a huge knife. When he slashed down, the terrifying wave that poured into the blade cut a dozen guards in front of him into dozens of pieces in the blink of an eye. Nature's test realm. When the middle-aged cultivator saw this scene, his face changed slightly. His eyes were gloomy, but he didn't panic. He said respectfully, "Elder Ghost, things have changed. Please help." The skinny old man, who was less than 6 feet tall, who had been beside him, narrowed his eyes into a line. Suddenly, he opened his eyes a little, and his figure disappeared in a flash. The old man in a gray robe was so anxious that he quickly approached Xian, and suddenly, a white claw shadow attacked him without warning, and the target was his heart. The old man in a gray robe snorted coldly. His left sleeve moved and turned into a silver round shield, blocking in front of the claw shadow. Ding! 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 The crisp sound of the 5 fingers colliding mixed into a sound. 5 black spots appeared on the silver round shield, and the entire shield was dyed black in the blink of an eye. The old man in a gray robe was moved. He immediately threw the round shield on the ground, letting it be polluted by the black and become a pile of black scrap iron. Sun Luo Claw, you are Wanxiang old demon. The old man in a gray robe's face became gloomy. The skinny old man looked at him expressionlessly, and suddenly laughed. Tut tut. It turns out that you, immortal mirage blade, Qiuzhen, are the lackey of the Jiguang sect. You really lose the face of casual practitioners. Qiuzhen's identity was seen through, and he had a cold sweat. I was originally from the Jiguang sect. How can I lose face? But you, when did you, Wanxiang old demon, fall to the point of working for others? Hearing this, Wanxiang old demon didn't get angry but laughed. He pointed to the luxurious middle-aged practitioner and sneered maliciously, "See clearly, I am just cooperating with the people of the Ghost Dome. After finishing this task, I will continue to be free. You'd better think about how to save your master." What, the Ghost Dome? Qiu Zhen's heart thumped, and he was even more anxious and worried. The Ghost Dome was famous in the Jili region for only recognizing money but not people. It did all kinds of bad things, but it was very slippery, which made people unable to catch it. Unexpectedly, this time, the people of the Ghost Dome actually wanted to kill the young lord. Who was against the Jiguang sect? Qiu Zhen was shocked and angry, but Wanxiang old demon stood in front of him, and he had no good way to save Xian'an. Hiss! I'm in trouble. Xian'an opened the universe ring and glanced at the few protective talismans left in it. He only felt a splitting headache. If he had known this earlier, he would have taken more talismans and not pretended to be a hero in front of his mother. Now, he constantly replenished the talismans, and then looked up at Qiu Zhen in the gap. "Grandpa Qiu, you reminded me earlier." He knew that his father would definitely send someone to protect him secretly, but he didn't know that it was Qiu Zhen who was good at disguise. He didn't expect that the enemy was so well prepared this time, and obviously wanted to kill him. "I didn't do anything bad. Who did I offend?" Xian'an's eyelids were twitching, and he touched a sword rune hanging on his neck from time to time. He smiled bitterly in his heart. The trump card given by his father was powerful, but it could only be used once. What he was facing now was the siege of 70 or 80 people. Crack! Suddenly, a harsh cracking sound sounded. Xian'an trembled in his heart, and all the talismans in his head burst into a spiritual shield. "Young lord of Jiguang sect, why are you struggling? Just let us kill you, so that we can finish our work earlier." Outside the shield, the voice of a luxurious practitioner came slowly. Xian'an snorted coldly and grinned. "Bastards of Ghost Region, I'm very lucky. I'd like to see whether you are faster or my father is faster." "Haha, young Lord Xian is really cute. My people don't set a big tactical matrix for isolation nearby. I'm afraid that your carrier rune is useless." Xian'an was sullen and didn't speak. He continued to manipulate the spiritual shield to delay time. "Senior fellow apprentice, let me out so that you can hold on for a while," Su Li suddenly said, and Xian'an remembered that there was another person beside him. He immediately showed an ugly smile to Su Li. "Junior sister apprentice Jojo, what are you talking about? This time, I really got you into trouble." Su Li shook her head and said, "If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have fallen into the trap. It's my fault." "Ha ha, it's really a loving couple. What a touching picture. Young Lord Xian, since you like your junior sister apprentice so much, why don't you kill yourself on the spot? Maybe I'll let her live if I'm in a good mood." The voice from the outside came again. Xian'an grinned and laughed. "In your dreams. You people of Ghost Region are all untrustworthy. If I believe it, am I a fool? Even if I die, I will disgust you before I die. Sword rune, open for me." As soon as he finished speaking, he touched the thumb-sized sword on his neck with one hand. In an instant, sharp and terrifying sword light rose from the top of his head, like a king descending, extremely domineering. Boom! 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 In everyone's horror, all the spiritual power and spiritual shields were shattered, turning into nourishment for the huge sword light. "This is..." Su Li and the middle-aged practitioner changed their faces at the same time. Qiu Zhen and Wanxiang old demon also stopped. Looking at the white sword light suddenly rising in the sky, they all felt a sense of fear. "What method is this?" At this moment Xian'an's face was pale. He clenched his teeth and stared at the huge sword rising in the air. He shouted in his heart, "Move!" And Don't use this sword rune easily unless it's a last resort. Otherwise, you will lose 800 men to kill 1,000 enemies. You must remember this. Thinking of what his father said, Xian'an finally understood that his father was simply a trap for his son. I can't use any means at all, let alone kill the enemy. The huge sword in the sky did not move for a long time. The middle-aged practitioner finally came to his senses, and his face was pale. When he thought of the fear just now, he couldn't help but become angry out of shame. He sneered, "Our young Lord Xian is really kind-hearted. Before you die, you even put on such a big show. I will take your head." As he said, the middle-aged practitioner appeared in front of Xian'an in a flash and reached out to pinch Xian'an's neck. Xian'an blushed and tried to avoid it. But the sword was on top of his head, which was like a mountain pressing on his body. Only his mouth could move. "Young lord." Qiuzhen's eyes widened in anger, but the Wanxiang old demon laughed. No matter how crazily he attacked, the Wanxiang old demon's incorporeal technique blocked all of his attacks, not affecting the middle-aged cultivator at all. At this critical moment, Xian'an, who fell into despair, suddenly saw a white palm grab the middle-aged practitioner's wrist. Everything came to an abrupt end. He turned his eyes in amazement and tried to look at the junior sister apprentice beside him, but his eyes were blurred. Su Li's smiling face appeared in his eyes, which was fascinating. Her red lips opened slightly, and her eyes turned. "Xian'an, what's your father's name?" You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.